and coming to you live here from Lake Jinzai, located in the western part of Izumo, Shimain Prefecture. It is the largest brackish water lake in the country of Japan, with the sixth largest catch of clams in Japan. We're here today with the PondCast number 33. Look at that. Got three, and then you got put it on three as well. Or you can do it like this, or like this, or like this, I guess. 3 plus 3. I am, of course, your host, Yaku of the Zaku. With me today, as usual, going to be joined by El Gallo Jugoso que tiene inyectara refuerzos. Light underscore VIP. And as per usual, we are produced by Tenji Belair, Kitore Osvolviele Niedziwishi, 16 Scots of Seki, Kuro. How we all doing?
What's up, Yak? What's up? It's great to be here, great to be back, and I'm glad that you have recovered. Clearly, very clearly, you have recovered. You're at 100%. You good to go?
Yeah. I'm good to shoot. I'm good to run. I'm good to take in the bounties, I guess.
Yeah.
The MMR.
Yeah.
These two nerds.
West Philadelphia, born and raised.
Yeah. Exactly. Up to no good.
Beautiful,
In the
beautiful.
playground.
Exactly. I got it. But yes, we are here. We are back with a podcast, and we have quite a lot of news to get into as well. Whew, oh boy! Again, as this time we do have the Choba interview that has snuck up on us. Again, it was a two-parter. Did it begin a couple weeks ago, and now this week we have the conclusion of the Choba interview.
Yeah. Chobo? Somebody?
Yeah. Choba.
Somebody said?
Choba.
Choba. Yes, the two-part of Choba interview. We kind of teased it a little bit last week, but in this past week as well, part 2 did come out. A little bit shorter than I was expecting, but still two-part nonetheless. And so now we can actually get in on it.
Yeah, that we can. Again, shout out to Zombigrub and of course the GLHF initiative that was of course kickstarted, and it was a pleasant surprise to see Choba once again. Of course, Choba was a big part of StarCraft at one point. Did kind of dip his toes into StarCraft a little bit later in its lifespan. Then kind of disappeared for a while. And did of course focus on other endeavors, on other esports. Then more recently came back. So yeah, it was definitely an interesting perspective to hear from Choba going into the interview, especially because it did feel very much so like the perspective from someone that isn't as endemic to StarCraft 2 as some of the other interviews that we've had.
Yeah, I mean, he said it himself, and he talked about it quite a bit as well. League of Legends was mostly his main game, but he did have an interest in StarCraft. He did dip his toes, as you were mentioning. I mean, this is going to be, I think, possibly revealing for me a little bit, because Chopra was actually one of the first hosts who was around at the time when I started watching some of these tournaments live. I'm talking specifically about Red Bull Battlegrounds, which I think was possibly the first thing that I watched live. I was interested in that because that was the one that I heard Total Biscuit was doing. And then, of course, BlizzCon 2015. I didn't watch all of it live, but I got a little bit of snippets here and there. This was like before I really started following the scene. I did manage to catch a bit of it here and there. So yeah, I thought it was really cool to see more of Chobra coming in here. And what he said is, I think he said this in part 2. I don't remember if it was part 2 or part 1 where he said this, but where he's like, when he came back last year for DreamHack Dallas after not being involved in the scene for almost 10 years or something like that, it was when he realized that there are people who started following the scene in that gulf where between the last time he hosted a StarCraft event in like 2016 or something like that, and 2024, which was just last year. And I was like, oh, these people don't know who Chobra is.
Yeah, yeah. Again, especially because he was around for a very like specific like segment in time, right? It was like 20. It was basically Heart of the Swarm into the beginning of Legacy of the Void. Then he was kind of gone, for quite some time, as you mentioned, till only recently, until last year. So it's a yeah. I mean, I remember being really pleasantly surprised to see Chober again. I was a little bit shocked. I was like, oh my god, okay. I guess he's kind of back, kind of. So yeah, it was great to see him again, considering he has that history with StarCraft as well. So it was, yeah, really great to catch up. And yeah, with that, Zombigo was able to have a bit of an in-depth interview with him. Again, as we kind of alluded to, part of it was like his early days of getting into StarCraft. He admitted himself that like, he was aware of it, of course, growing up in Korea. He played it a little bit, but didn't really get too like engrossed into it until much later on, until Heart of the Swarm, basically.
A little bit before that, I think, is what he mentioned. Well, like towards the end of Wings of Liberty, and then Heart of Sword came out, and his interest
Mhm,
died until a little bit later.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, for
Which
sure,
is
for
also
sure.
why,
Mhm.
yeah, I was just gonna say, which is also why he mentioned, which is also why, as he mentioned, he was only really involved professionally when towards the end of Heart of Swarm, just because, yeah, initially he just had no interest in an expansion dedicated to Zerg, which I feel that.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Uh, he only came in for the Protoss, like I
can
feel
definitely relate, yeah.
not for the Terran or the Zerg.
Uh,
So yeah, it was definitely interesting to hear that perspective, because I don't think we've really heard from that from him before. Like
it,
usually he's the one doing the interviews, right? Not the one being interviewed.
yeah,
So yeah, it was really interesting hearing kind of like his early interests in StarCraft and the early days in StarCraft from at least his
and
perspective.
absolutely as well. And because of that, it also meant that he had. And I keep saying this is a unique perspective to add, but I did like that he was being asked specifically about quote unquote the rivalry between or the elitism between StarCraft and specifically Brute War for a little while, but also after a while into StarCraft 2, compared to a lot of the other esports. And he said something really interesting, which was, I think he said something along the lines of, there was StarCraft elitism, but at the time he felt as though it was elitism that was earned. After a while, though, it kind of, the older it got and the more other esports started really ramping things up, the more difficult it kind of was to really justify it.
Well, yeah, like he was, because he was talking about, because he was asked obviously about League of Legends and StarCraft and kind of like the rise and fall of certain esports, and how like StarCraft was like kind of at the top for a while, and there was like a bit of a rivalry and a little bit of animosity between the audiences and between the fan bases of the other esports. But also he spoke about how like after a while, like people stopped caring, because like there
Right.
wasn't really a
Yeah.
competition anymore. Like as in very clearly, League had won. So it's
Yeah.
like so people weren't really talking about it. People weren't really
I
talking about StarCraft like being like a quote unquote dead game or anything. And it was more like the StarCraft 2 audience or StarCraft 2 fan base that would keep bringing that up, right? And they were the ones that would
yeah.
and it was almost like to their own detriment, where it was kind of like fulfilling their own prophecy by the fact that they kept talking about it, and that kind of like stayed kind of in the mindset for a while at a time.
I could say it still gets brought up a little bit in Dota, specifically League of Legends. How League of Legends basically won and did become the biggest esport for quite a while. I could say that there was still a conversation at a couple of Dota scenes, but it's just like that Madman scene where it's like, you have the Dota and the StarCraft guys who are like, yeah, I feel bad for you, and the League of Legends guys like, who are you? It happens quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah, that was definitely the vibe at the time. I guess many years ago at this point. But yeah, it was really interesting to hear that. If you recall, he spoke about how he wanted to be a caster initially. Initially, he just
Yeah.
wanted to be a caster, and he kind of like stumbled his way into more of a host role instead.
Which
I hmm?
No, go ahead. I was gonna add to what you were gonna say.
And we got a little bit of that from Tasteless, if you remember, how he was talking about
Hmm.
how difficult it is to host and how much more work and prep it takes. And we got more of that here from Cobra as well, talking about how like hosting and constructing this narrative is something that he did work hard at, and that
Yep. And
definitely was like something that he wasn't necessarily looking for, but something that he did eventually embrace.
Yeah, which I'm just gonna say I think was to the benefit of the scene as a whole. To
Mhm.
Chobra as well. I mean, he's doing really well for himself right now as a League of Legends, and also nowadays I think Valorant host. But yeah, I definitely think that he's up there as one of the absolute best hosts that we've ever seen. And pardon me, he talked a little bit about what some of his goals were as a host initially, and what he kind of wanted to get out of hosting. And I think it was really insightful. And I think again, this scene is better off for them. First of all, he was in part one. He talked a little bit about how he kind of felt like his job as a host was, and I think we talked about this a little bit last week, but
Mhm.
we didn't really go too in depth of it. Part of how he viewed his job as a host is basically to get people excited, even if or in a meta where the competition itself might not be the most exciting thing, where looking at two players, like he was speaking specifically about the swarm host meta in PvZ especially, looking at two players just standing on their sides of the map and throwing things at each other until eventually one of them runs out of patience isn't very exciting. But there are still other things that an audience can be invested in, and so he felt that it was his job as a host to try to get the audience invested in things like the players themselves. A player making it to this stage of competition for the first time, or some of the other narratives. Like you mentioned, he was looking to see if there was any type of storylines or narratives that he could construct
Mhm.
just to get the audience interested in them.
Yeah, like it's really important to always bear this in mind because I think a lot of people, especially if you weren't around in the era, kind of view the Heart of the Swarm host era as like a negative thing, and it was when it came to the meta of the game and the health of the game. But it's also important to bear in mind that this was also the game at its peak. This is when
Right.
there was the most viewers
Most
watching
views, yeah.
StarCraft. Was during that
Highest
Swarm host
investment as
meta.
well.
Yeah, exactly. And um, you could definitely argue that the meta didn't help at all. Like the playstyles that were being played
Yeah.
in the meta didn't help. But what's important is that it wasn't like that was happening every game. That was in specific matchups when it comes to like the Mass Swarm Host and Sky Toss and these Death Ball of armies. But as you were mentioning, like there was definitely a lot of storylines. Like there was also Pete Kesper as well. Kesper,
Yeah.
they were getting involved into SE2 now that Wings of Liberty was done. Like they were now stepping in. There were a lot more players. There was all these international events. Like there was a lot going on in StarCraft at the time, and you could argue that that maybe like overcame some of the games themselves, and even when it came to Swarmhost games, like a lot of people were hyped because this is also the era when foreigners were actually beating Koreans, embracing that Swarmhost meta. Talking about Stefano, talking about Snoot especially, who did fully embrace
Mhm.
Swarmhost in every matchup, including against Terran, and was finding a lot of success and getting a lot of hype because of it as well.
And on the flip side of that, when a player finally beat the swarm hosting Zerg player, that would
Mhm.
also generate a lot of hype. That was partially why MMA versus Firecake, I believe, in the Home Story Cup is, even though if you look at it, if you just look at the result for one MMA, it might not seem too exciting, but then you realize, wait a minute, this is a Terran player who was beating a Swarm host player. It was very, very. It did elicit some pretty strong
Mhm.
emotions whenever he was able to beat him.
For sure, for sure. And
Catharsis
again,
as well. It's for viewers who weren't around in that era but were around for most of the Legacy of the Void. I would say it's similar to in 2019 when Classic beat Rogue using Protoss bullshit. This
mhm.
is when everybody agreed Zerg was pretty busted, and I could not believe my ears watching that stream, hearing people chant and cheer for DTs.
Always
And that's how
exciting,
much
always
people
exciting.
hated that Zerg meta.
But yeah, so it was really cool to hear from him when it comes to hosting. Again, it always brought me back to
Yeah,
Fluke as well, like talking about like
the
about the work that gets put into like coming up with like these talking points or
yeah,
things to bring up when it comes to discussing players.
yeah, and that's the second thing that I really appreciated from Chobra, which he mentioned it in part two, and he's absolutely right. It's also part of the reason why I like Chobra so much as a host. And in a
Mhm.
similar vein, excuse me, I My neighbors are burning stuff again. It's getting in my
Uh,
throat. But it's definitely something I really appreciate from Chobra, and there are a couple of other hosts who do this as well. When he said himself, because he speaks Korean and he
mhm,
talks a lot to the Korean players, he would always get frustrated watching other tournaments or watch both in StarCraft and also in League of Legends. But he was speaking specifically about the StarCraft players as well. He would talk to these Korean pros, joke around with them, have a great time, and notice that they have a lot of personality.
mhm,
But then you put them in front of a camera, you have whether it's a Korean host or whether it's a foreign host, an English speaking host interviewing them, they would always just go blank and yeah, kind of kill that side of them, kind of kill their personality intentionally, and just try to give very, very bland, very, very boring and canned responses. And so Chobra was talking about it, how one of his goals, since he was going to be not just hosting but also translating, was he wanted to bring some of the personality that he knows that these players have to the forefront, which definitely took a while. And I also think he wasn't the only one, but yeah, it definitely
mhm.
took quite a few people to realize what the formula is of how to get these Korean players to not be afraid of not be afraid to showcase some of their own personalities.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess we can jump around a little bit here because these two topics are definitely related. Is that that a lot of it also came down to like they were discussing like the concept of like the quote unquote like faceless Korean and how bland the perception was of a lot of Korean players, right? How they didn't necessarily have much of a personality. They were there just to win games and to win games for the fans, right? Like their responses in interviews became memes, right? Like even there, right? Like it's like, oh, I'll play good games for the fans, sort of thing. But it was important that I appreciate that they elaborated on that. It was important to take note that like that was all intentional, right? Like
Yep.
especially when it came to international events where a lot of the Korean players would feel like they were on the one hand like kind of like representing their nation, so they have to be like they have to be cordial,
Well
they have to
behaved,
like
yeah.
yeah, well behave, like they have to conduct themselves in a certain manner. They were kind of it isn't just them, but like in general, like Korean society is like a little bit more reserved, right? It's like a little bit more,
Mhm.
you have to conduct yourself a certain way, especially like in public space, in a public area, and especially internationally as well. So it would always take a little bit more to kind of get that out of them, at least when it comes to those international events. I remember at the time, I say something similar nowadays, but like whenever there was people like in Twitch chat or something talking about like, oh, Koreans like they have no personality or anything like that. That was always a tell. That was always like that was
And
always
they
like
never
a
watched Pro League.
exact. Yes, I was about to say that.
Good question.
it's
Yeah.
that's always a tell. It's like, I see
Pro
you don't watch
TV,
StarCraft.
Sojung especially, really
Yeah,
good at
yeah.
doing this. But of course, that was for a
Mhm.
Korean speaking audience. So,
Mm.
well, I say that, but also they would produce segments where they tried to get the Korean pros to answer only in English. I'm
Mhm.
talking specifically about 10 questions, 10 answers.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they had a lot of like out of just game like segments like that. But it came down to not even just that, but even if you watch Pro League, that's also where you got to see all the Koreans just like take down that
Bantering. Yeah.
barrier and interact with each other, right, as
Yep.
friends, right? Like and that team
Roasting each
camaraderie
other.
sort of.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. That's where you got the friendships of like Maru and Terminator and Creator as well, all like on full display. Hero with the CJ team,
Mhm.
Stork with
On
Samsung. Like you got to just see more of them, and
but
that's a side of them that you
yeah.
rarely got to see in
and
international events.
and on the flip side of that, you also had Parting and Flash just
Yeah.
roasting the shit out of each other every single time they were on stage.
Exactly. Like there was so much energy and so much personality in
It's
those
like
Pro League matches. And you got to see it in the GSL selection group stage selection as
yeah.
well. Like I always joke
It
that that's like the best part of GSL is seeing them all like interact with each other.
Yeah, especially in Legacy of the Void, I think when they force the players to do segments, like usually interview segments, but usually with a twist, where
Hmm.
you would always try to get, oh man, you would always see a bit more of their personality. I will never forget a recent one, a GSL. group selection stage where the segment was draw your dream,
Uh-huh.
and a lot of it was really like normal stuff. You had like parting being like, "Oh, I my dream is to just be happy. I'm walking down a forest with my girlfriend. They were just having a good time, enjoying life." Stats was like, "In my dream, I'm super rich. I'm at the top of a building. I'm the CEO. I own the building as well, and I own the other buildings on the street, and I make so much passive income." And then you got to Sue, and he's like, "My dream is to beat the shit out of everybody who beat me in the finals and throw their unmoving bodies into a pit, starting
Let's
with
go.
innovation." And it's like, damn.
Let's go. But yeah, like you would see it there, but again, like as we were kind of mentioning that like it also helps that like you're also having like a lot of these Korean players like interact with each other, and a lot of them are good friends already. When it comes to international events, like it's a weekend, like often like there's a handful of Koreans there. They're on their own. They're a little bit more isolated. Like it's a little bit harder to get that out of them, especially on stage. Like it's harder to get that out of them, especially on an individual level as well. So like for people that only watch, Dream Hacks, IEMs, like those international events, or even BlizzCons as well, like they would never see that. They would never see that. They would never experience that, and that's where it's like the job of the host to try to get them to see that side of them. And it's difficult. It is very, very difficult to do so.
Yeah.
And yeah, much props to all the hosts that did attempt to, throughout the years, whether it's Choba, whether it's Smix, whether it's Mal as well. Yeah, that is a hard thing to accomplish.
Yeah. I guess definitely sharing a language, and also, yeah, sharing a
Mhm,
language definitely helps a lot. And also the
mhm,
cultural connection, like Chobra, as he mentioned, growing up, he kind of split between Korea and the US. So I think that helps. And I think part of that is why you can also notice that a lot of the Korean pros do feel very comfortable when they're being interviewed by Chobra.
mhm. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Definitely. That led into a discussion about some microtransactions, which I think is quite fitting considering that, a lot of his roots are
Uh,
in League of Legends
see?
more than anything, which is all about
But
microtransactions. And
yes, I can't tell you
yeah,
how many podcasts I listen to where it's people who play a lot of League of Legends, and people who are really into League of Legends bitching about how they panda to the anime skins, or they panda to the heroes that have more anime skins, because they want people to buy their waifu skins.
yeah, I mean the weaves, mate, they're willing to they're willing to invest, Pappy. Oh my god, true. Really, that's what we were missing in SE2. We needed like drones with cat ears. That's what we needed.
Exactly.
Not wrong.
And the ooh eyes. Well,
I
they
We
mean,
did have the
did.
ooh eyes for April Fools one year, but they
I
needed it to
just
be year
I
round.
just want to say, look at how many people are using the diva now. So, just saying.
Mhm.
True.
True.
You all need to expose yourselves right now.
Yeah, Shin.
Shin. He uses Korean diva. That's even worse.
every time. But yeah, it was nice that I mean, it was interesting to hear his perspective. Of course, when it comes to microtransactions, it's one of those things where clearly that did benefit the game, especially later on. We're referring to
Yeah, the
announcers,
war
skins.
chest.
The war chest was the big one as well that
I kind of
everyone
miss
looks
the
at
war
it.
chest.
Yeah, everyone looks at it as like, if only we had that sooner, if only that was done from the beginning, and then it could have been expanded upon. Like it was successful when it began, but it began very late in the lifespan of SE2. But the discussion mainly spoke about how like, it's hindsight is 2020 sort of thing, and it's definitely difficult just because StarCraft 2 was one of the last like games of the era before DLC, before
Yep.
microtransactions, before all of that really became more ingrained in gaming. It was like it's this bygone era of you have the base game and then you have expansions, and that's a rare sight
Yep.
nowadays. Like expansions aren't really much of a thing anymore in gaming.
Yeah, pretty much only MMOs nowadays do it. I mean,
True.
to be fair, nowadays most games do battle passes, so
Hmm.
it's which is kind of like an expansion on a much smaller scale, and they come out way more often and there's less content. But
Uh-huh.
and it costs a little less, but with how often they come out, you're probably gonna end up spending the same amount of money anyway, probably more.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, definitely a little bit of Well, I want to say a little bit of stubbornness from the side of Blizzard, but like you said, this was just kind of how things were done back in 2010 and then later on 2013 as well. I remember later down the line in 2016, or around the time Legacy of the Void came out, or even just before Legacy of the Void came out, when they were, I think, discussions and people were suggesting, hey, you look at League of Legends, you look at Dota 2, you look at all the big esport titles, and they're all free. You look at even Hearthstone, which is a game that you guys developed. If you want competitive StarCraft to follow a similar way, either it has to also go free to play, or at the very least, it has to be like CS:GO, which I mean nowadays Counter Strike is free, but back then Counter Strike cost like $10 or even less on sales, which happened pretty regularly. So you can't just release this for $40 for the base game anymore. $60 if you want all the other like additional goodies, like the epilogue campaign or the other cosmetic items or the stuff for other games on BNet. But yeah, that was definitely a lot of hesitancy, and I vaguely remember one of the things that one of the arguments against going free to play, which wasn't from the side of Blizzard, but rather from the player base. Well, I say player base. I didn't really delve too much in forums and stuff like that back then, but I remember a couple of content creators, specifically TV as well, arguing against going free to play, saying that there's actually a really big hacking problem, or there was a really big hacking problem at the time, which is why they didn't want to make it free to play. Like it would exacerbate certain issues like that.
Yeah, I mean there was definitely reasons for and against for sure. I mean in the end did go free to play, did benefit the game, did invest into this idea of microtransactions and incorporating skins and war chests and all that stuff. Once again, is another example of this thing where StarCraft 2 was kind of like the guinea pig, where everyone could see what was working, what wasn't working, and then kind of like adjust themselves to make sure that they were fine. And it was StarCraft 2 that was kind of left in the dust in certain aspects. And yeah, it just took a long time for that change to occur. I mean, we got there in the end, but yeah, again, you could
well,
argue just a little bit late.
in the end, we got there, and then we stopped.
Yeah. Well, that's the main. That's right. Like a little bit too late. One of the big reasons why you would want microtransactions, I should wind it back, is because it does kind of push the developers to continue to support the game, right? Because the game is still making money, the game is still like generating income or generating revenue, I should say, to the company, so it would incentivize and give them more reason and give them a way to justify for like supporting the game in the long run, right? That's the purpose of that, which is why it was so important and people were pushing for it towards the end. But as you said, like just a little bit late when it came to that, and likewise a little bit late to respond to giving players something that they wanted, right? Whether it came down to skins, like consoles as well, UIs, like all stuff that
Announcers,
really cool. But
and
yeah, announcers, yeah, for sure. So definitely interesting to look back on, definitely retrospectively, especially considering, as you mentioned, like there are a lot of people that came in later when the game went free to play, and they don't necessarily know the hardships that the game went through before that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Along those lines, they were also talking about the campaign, and that's kind of alongside it, is that a lot of these free-to-play games, they don't have like that single-player mode. Like that's also why like that justifies like
Overwatch was supposed to have one, but we all know where that went.
Yeah, like CS:GO doesn't have single player, like League of Legends doesn't have like a campaign mode, Dota doesn't have a campaign mode. It's all just PvP. So that also is what justified paying the base price for that single player experience. And they were talking about the importance of that. And I feel like that's interesting to bring up once again, because that's another big talking point nowadays with the upcoming RTSs that are currently being criticized because of the importance of that single player campaign.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest example probably Stormgate.
Yep.
Stormgate, I almost said Stormgate Gates of Fire, but Stormgate's coming out, and the multiplayer, that's going to be free to play. You can play as all 3 races. That's going to be fine. And I believe co-op is also going to be free, or at least the initial couple of commanders are. later on the line, they're probably going to add more that you will have to pay for. But for now, the thing that you're spending money on for Stormgate, apart from apart from those who kickstarted it for the devs, the thing you're spending money for is the campaign, which is separated, which again is what StarCraft ended up doing eventually. Free PvP, not free PvP. In fact, if you said PvP was your selling point, I don't think anybody would download your game to begin with. But free multiplayer.
There you go.
And a couple of free co-op commanders, but additional co-op commanders and the campaigns, and also some of the other cosmetic things are what you end up spending money on.
Yeah, exactly. Which is kind of like the trajectory that Stormgate is going in. But like the importance of a well fleshed out campaign is something that really carried StarCraft. Something that we've known for a long time, and we heard that Choba, he found out a little bit later, was that the vast majority of the player base, like 80+%, they only play the campaign in SE2, and they're still big fans of StarCraft. But that's what they play. That's what they focus on.
80% only play the campaign, and then another 15% play the campaign and co-op.
Yeah,
and then like 5% ladders.
Yeah, it's
and
like
then,
campaign.
And then it's like 0.5% plays Archon mode.
It's like campaign, then co-op, and then ladder, and just the amount of players that only indulge in the story and the campaign. I mean, I can say that like anecdotally myself, like I've got plenty of friends that bought StarCraft 2 that play the campaign, never touched the multiplayer, never had any interest in the multiplayer. But that's like a really good way to like introduce all these people to the world of StarCraft, to the characters, and to get them engrossed and get them and fall in love with these characters as well.
On this note, I want to mention that StarCraft also has a really big, I mean, I don't want to know if I want to say big, but like very advanced modding scene in general. Like there are a lot of custom campaigns and custom games essentially made in the StarCraft engine that like are constantly being worked on. Like the fact that SC Evo is being a thing and they're working on a ranked ladder system, like sure, that's also like a 1v1 kind of thing, but like there are so many different modes that are made by the community in StarCraft.
That was actually, honestly, that was what got me to download StarCraft, the StarCraft client to begin with, was because I heard on a podcast Total Biscuit talk about the Bejeweled mod in the StarCraft 2 arcade. And I'm like, I like match 3.
Yeah, exactly.
It's Star Jeweled, and it's fun. And then that's also how I started playing more, opening the StarCraft client more, was because these two people, but especially one person who you cannot see, but you will hear quite a bit on this show, dragged me to play tower defense all the time back in 2017.
Yeah, those RTD days. But yeah, the reason why we bring this up is because, of course, when Stormgate, when they opened up their playtest, they went under big criticism and big scrutiny for the lack of polish on their campaign, on their single player mode. It was definitely like something that people were not very receptive of. There was definitely a lot to be left to be desired. And I remember talking about it at the time about how like this is, I would say, the most important part. The most important part of the RTS is that single player experience, because it gets you invested into everything, and it's supposed to then kind of drag people in and then funnel them into your co-ops, into your multiplayer from that moment. You don't go straight into multiplayer from the get-go sort of thing.
Yeah, the Wardy experience, I would say, is Wardy is in the minority of people who only play multiplayer and don't play the single player, unfortunately.
Exactly. Yeah, that is the minority. And I guess like if you want to create like a hardcore RTS that only caters towards that kind of player base, then you can do that. I suppose that's kind of what Battle Aces is doing, where they're focusing on the multiplayer aspect. But at the same time, like it does feel like that's not necessarily like if you remember, the release of Stormgate was like the cinematic and the characters, like that's what they're trying to push.
And the thing is, you don't want to be throwing your players from multiplayer into the deep end either, because that's usually how you just get people to play one match, have no idea what they're doing, and then just immediately quit after that, because they're like, well, I don't know what I'm doing, so why bother? And you know, a lot of games do usually force you to play a tutorial at the beginning to try to get an understanding of how things work. You know, League of Legends, I think, has a really good tutorial. Heroes has a good tutorial, but especially good for Blizzard fans who just want Uther, the Lightbringer, to tell Raynor to stop overthinking the premise of the game and just press the buttons and lane, all right? Stop questioning why we're interacting. You know, things like that. The Dota, well, I think they have a new tutorial now, but I can say that back when I tried Dota for the first time in like 2013, it was not very intuitive at all. It didn't really tell you much about how the game functioned or stuff like that. So that's very hit or miss. But like you were saying, if you have a single player campaign, if you have one that incorporates the multiplayer mechanics and also gets you to really invested, gets you to care about these characters and especially this universe, that is a way to get people to stick to it and give them kind of an understanding of how the game works and make them want to try multiplayer, right? It's similar thing with League of Legends Arcane. How after Arcane came out, everybody downloaded League of Legends, played it once, and I was like, I'm really invested in this universe, but I cannot handle this. I cannot handle this game at all. So I'm gonna quit and just keep looking at fan art.
Yeah, and from Chober's from his perspective, like he was bringing up how, because the numbers are public on Steam, for example, like you can see Call of Duty, you can see all these other kind of like multiplayer games, and you can see like the just the comparison of players that have achievements in playing single player and have not touched the multiplayer whatsoever. And again, like that's kind of like the main consumer experience.
Which like blows my mind for things like Call of Duty and stuff like that, because I don't play Call of Duty, but I play Battlefield, and I don't think I've played a single campaign mission of any Battlefield I've played.
No, yeah, like I'm the same as I guess the main populace, where I know that like for Halo, for example, multiplayer was a big thing, and I never touched it. I mean, I didn't have the.
Halo campaign was pretty good though.
Yeah. I mean, they're meant to be good.
It's true, yeah.
Play the campaign.
They're meant to be good so that you get immersed in the universe and then you want to play the multiplayer. True. But like you know, Call of Duty and Battlefield, their campaigns are not.
Yeah, and that's all I play, like the campaigns of Call of Duty, campaigns of Battlefield, and same with most of the people, and that can be a little bit eye-opening for especially if you're mainly engrossed in like the esports side of things, because that's where your main focus is. But there's like a whole other kind of quote unquote like kind of casual player base that does matter as well, right? And a lot of these people are your viewers. Like there's a lot of people that watch StarCraft that don't play multiplayer. I mean that's the big thing, right? A lot of viewers of StarCraft don't necessarily play it, but they can still enjoy it, and part of that is also kind of being introduced to it through something like the single player experience.
Because watching the guys watching bugs pounce on top of mouthless dudes, it's fun.
Sure.
No, I don't want to be the guy building the bugs. That's hard. But I'll watch people do it.
So it was interesting to hear, especially again considering that there are a plethora of RTSs on the horizon, and that is going to be one of the big focuses for Stormgate, for Zero Space, for Immortal Gates of Pyre, and some of the other RTSs as well. So we'll see how that does turn out. Again, especially considering what happened with Stormgate, and it is something that they're addressing, that they were working on as well. But like it does feel like it doesn't. They did lose a lot. They gained a lot of ill will initially when it came to that initial release, but we'll see.
We'll see
how it does improve.
Well, the lack of polish and a couple of other stuff that I would say are things you don't normally think about, but were a bit more like design related. Yeah, you don't normally think about if they're done well, but
I mean, I see. Wait, I don't want to gloss over because we say lack of polish. Very, very like pre-alpha kind of stated like single player. Like you couldn't even pause. You couldn't even pause the game. Like you couldn't save either. Like those. Yeah. But so they did discuss that. From there, they actually started talking about Korean companies because, of course, Chober was working in Korea, was working for OGN, working on that side of things, and it was really cool to hear his perspective working in the Korean scene, especially in those earlier days.
Absolutely, and he didn't mention it outright, but it kind of got me thinking a little bit because he was talking about how the Korean companies, they're extremely good at marketing the players. They're extremely good at constructing these narratives, being very, very creative and being very, very creative when it comes to forging these kind of storylines. It's like the organizers are very super creative, but then the players themselves, when they're going on to an interview or stuff like that, there's a little bit of a disconnect between what the orgs were marketing and what the players actually say. Once they and how they actually act when they get on the stage. Obviously, they still play fantastically, and the gameplay and the way that they are able, the gameplay itself is very, very inspiring. But yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a disconnect. That was a bit of a challenge, I think, for a lot of specifically the organizers, when they were like, okay, we've created this huge manga anime opening.
Mm-hmm.
Can you be cool? Do something cool when you get on the stage.
I mean, the answer is, especially in that era, yeah, 100%. Like it,
absolutely,
they pulled it off. Like
it's only when they go overseas. It's only when they go overseas when it's a little bit more awkward.
Well, like I think we spoke about it, right? Where like this stoic like nature is something that came a little bit more easier to them, right? Like not necessarily showing as much emotion, but being like this like machine go to the game sort of thing is something that a lot of players could really like lean into. Like players like Innovation, for example, like he even got that reputation in a positive light in the international scene.
And he even leaned into it later down the line
Yeah.
when I think his team and managers were like, okay, this is your brand, lean into it. When you do your WCS signature series, say that you didn't know say that you were confused about your emotions when you won your first tournament.
Exactly. But they also spoke about their like I should say global broadcasts and their global ideals as well when it comes to Kespa, when it comes to OGN, and this was like a big issue, an issue that never really got resolved, that was plaguing some of these Korean teams and Korean companies, but because Kespa was so ingrained in the Korean esports, what that meant was that a lot of these teams, I mean, obviously they had one and only one sponsor. You know, you had KT, you had SKT, you had Samsung,
and they were all the chaebol conglomerates.
Yeah, and these were all like obviously beholden to these bigger companies, but because these companies are so big and because they were investing,
they own everything. They have their hands in like every industry in Korea. Yeah.
But they never felt the need to try to reach out and gain more sponsors and gain other forms of revenue and try to promote their players internationally. More importantly, like they never felt the need to try to reach that global audience. Like it was all very localized, and they felt that they didn't need to. Right?
With the notable exception of KT, I would say KT pretty early on realized, wait a minute, we can get other sponsors, and so that's why KT Rolster were the first, I think, Kespa team to get a deal with Razer. Well, maybe not the first, but definitely in StarCraft 2, they were the only ones who were like really pushing, hey, it's not just KT that is our sponsor. We also have, I'm also playing with my Razer mouse and my Razer earphones while drinking Pocari Sweat. Oh no, I think Pocari Sweat was a Pro League sponsor, but there was only the KT players who were like, Pocari Sweat.
It wasn't a sponsor. It was only Flash. It was just his favorite drink. So it was like, yeah. But
Pro League though at one point though, right? Am I crazy?
I mean, Matt and you did for no, that was GSL. But
GSL and Hot.
Yeah. I'm not.
Maybe I am old. I'm just saying.
But yeah, and that's something that hurt the scene, especially once Kespa pulled out, right? Like once Kespa pulled out, like there was nothing left to kind of prop these teams up, and they had a really hard time trying to reach a global audience just because they had no infrastructure, they had no setup for that sort of scenario. So that's where everything kind of fell apart. And yeah, it was just it was interesting just hearing that perspective once again, or that retrospective, even like looking back at these Korean companies, and again their more isolationist ideals where they just didn't really feel the need to reach out internationally.
That's a pro tip to not only aspiring team owners but also content creators out there. Don't rely solely on just one source of revenue. All right, you want to diversify.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. That affected like the broadcasting companies as well, talking about, you know,
Yep.
your SSL or your OGN or your GSL or GOM TV
Yep.
even, where again, like I mean, even when it comes to Africa, for example, like we speak about all the time, how they tried and they failed to kind of
Massively
launch their
scaled back.
global platform,
Yep.
to reach like international fans or international viewers when it comes to streaming, when it comes to their platform, when it comes to sponsors and ads as well. It was all like, you know, Chilsong Cider, right, or these other like Korean companies, and
Hot
yeah,
Six.
Yeah, Hot Six, another
There was
example, right?
one international sponsor, but that came much, much later towards the end of GSL's lifespan.
Mhm.
Too
Yeah,
little, too
yeah,
late. Yeah.
exactly. Like it's something that they never really like invested into, and it's a shame that never did happen. A bit of it was like maybe like Korean elitism, but again, I do think that a lot of it was just like they were feeling quite comfortable just being under the umbrella of Casper for a long time, so they just didn't
Yeah,
feel the need to, right?
exactly. Like they got too comfortable, as you were saying,
Hmm.
which I think is a pretty good way of putting it. But it's a mixture of that, but also just the fact that yeah, a lot of management in Korea does tend to be a bit more, shall we say, localized. It's like
Hmm.
again, I feel like it's a very East Asian thing. Like it happens a lot with Japanese orgs as well, where they're like, well,
Hmm.
we're doing well locally, so why do we need to go international, or why do we need to release the best game of our franchise on PC? I will never forgive Capcom for never releasing Metal Gear Rising in Asia.
Uh-huh. True, true. And I mean it was even harder for teams like, you know, KT or SKT, right? Because I mean, what are they? The Korean Telecom and South Korean Telecom. They literally cannot sell their product
Yeah,
outside of Korea. Like
the
so
best
like
the
yeah,
best they can
it's
hope for is for tourists to come over and buy a temporary
uh-huh.
SIM card from SK Telecom or from KT.
Yeah, so like specifically for those two teams, like it's a little bit more understandable because they literally cannot make money outside of Korea.
I
But for like CJ and Samsung,
Yes,
like I mean, I guess CJ a little bit as well, but
Samsung
like for
as
at least
well.
Samsung,
Yeah, Samsung
hmm
had so much potential. They were like, there were a
yeah,
couple of years recently where they were straight up the number one smartphone manufacturer in the entire world. They were outselling both Apple and Huawei
hmm
by many, many units. So yeah, there was a lot of potential there. You mentioned CJ as well, and yeah, CJ, huge conglomerate. They are
hmm
in freaking everything.
yeah,
I walked past a construction site the other day here in Singapore, and I looked at like the sign that they had, and they're like, "This is joint operation by the CJ Corporation." I'm like, "Yep, they're everywhere." I think Zombie Grub as well mentioned that in a lot of U.S. supermarkets as well,
hmm
not just in the international section, but in a lot of the other aisles when you're looking for things like stock or for like not preservatives, but you know what I'm talking about, like flavoring
hmm
powder and stuff. Usually they'll find CJ Entis has their hands in that.
hmm
So
yeah.
there was definitely a lot of potential for these two teams to really expand.
hmm Yeah, exactly. And Choba, he actually gave a little bit more insight in regards to that as well. If you recall, he was talking about specifically, I think it's applicable to the Korean teams, but he was talking about OG, and he was talking about these broadcasting networks that were streaming StarCraft, that were broadcasting esports, talking about how like, yeah, you know, like they're doing this, but at the same time they're like a very, very, very small subset of the company, where the company doesn't really
Yeah,
care too much about investing into it, because, you know, where do they make their money? On
which
cable TV, on in sports and other like avenues and other parts of the company. And this is really just like a little offshoot, like a little project that they're willing to invest into, but like they don't really care to try to make a
which
better profit out of it, sort of thing.
which is a double-edged sword a little bit. I think Shobra as well was mentioning how because he didn't care that much, he could really get his own.
Hmm.
He could really provide his own input and make sure that people actually listened. You know, it didn't have to go all. It didn't have to go through several layers of approval or stuff like that. So they could just
Hmm.
on the ground just focus on producing a really good broadcast and producing a really good show. But the other side to that, the other side of that coin is, like you said, they didn't really care if whether it did well or not. If
Yeah.
all of a sudden they decide, okay, we want to tighten our belts, that would be the first thing that gets cut.
Hmm. Yeah, which is a shame that that was the perspective on a lot of these Korean broadcasting networks or on a lot of these Korean teams. Like likewise, right? Like for KT and SKT, I think they have like baseball teams, and they of course have like other big
Hey,
investments in other
I know they're
areas.
sponsored. Dude, wait. Korean Baseball League. I got interested in Korean baseball watching Crank cast, I think, one season of it.
Yeah, yeah.
He was so
So
proud of his hometown until they got knocked out.
yeah, it's KT Wiz. Yeah, that's the KT roster like Korean baseball team. There you
Ah, the Wiz. That's an old school KT esport name.
go.
That was like early 2000s. The name of the StarCraft team was KT Wiz, and I think, yeah, no, by the time StarCraft 2 came out, it was KT Rolsta.
Well, yeah,
Which,
well,
by the way,
they had
what the hell is a Rolsta?
it's like roller coaster.
Ah, but they combined it. It's
They did, yeah,
efficiency. Yeah. They shortened it for efficiency.
for sure. But yeah, like
Okay,
again, like
okay,
for
okay.
It-
I kid
it-
you not. I kid you not. All these years, I had no idea that's what it was supposed to be.
what do you mean? There's a little
What do
roller
you
coaster on
mean?
the
There's a
logo.
There's a track.
Look,
There's a track
I just
rain?
took the words like that's what they call themselves. That's their name. I don't
Yeah.
need
It
to know
must
the
be a
meaning.
Korean thing. It's probably just a Korean thing. It's
Shit.
very fitting because being a fan of KT is an emotional roller coaster.
There you go. There you go. But so yeah, it was again interesting to hear that to hear some like behind the scenes stories from Choba, kind of like explaining that and kind of like bringing that to the forefront. So it was really cool to hear. That led us into right. You mentioned it. That led us into the intros that they were making, and I think he himself admitted, and I think there's a little bit more insight from Choba just because he's in multiple esports. How that like manga style intro was never quite replicated as successfully. Like there were some, I think League tried to do their own version at one point, but like
Yeah,
those intros were very iconic, and it's something that
It-
kind of that has fallen by the wayside nowadays.
it's harder to do for a team game, I think.
Mhm.
Because when it's a 1v1 game, you can have it like, all right, every player's an anime protagonist or anime antagonist. You know, you have your you have your protagonist, he's a good guy, he's called Jumi, and he's the one
Let's go.
who are gonna douse in light, and he's gonna be the chosen one, and he's gonna get knocked down, but he'll be
Mhm.
bloodied, his mouth will be bleeding, but he's gonna keep getting back up to face the antagonist. His name is Iba. And the antagonist, you'll have him in the darkness, you'll have it surrounding him, etc., etc. How do you do that for a team game? Like, you can't do it for... It's hard to do that for a team game because it starts to feel like you... First of all, in a league, if it's something like 5v5 or 6v6... Wait. I'm trying to remember how many players in the team for Rainbow Six Siege, but yeah, whether it's 5v5 or 6v6, that's just way too many players. But also, it feels like you end up not necessarily pigeonholing them, but it feels your options are either. I think the option typically becomes we will make it so that instead of one specific player has this specific art style or archetype or whatever, we're gonna have the team do that, but it's kind of hard to be... It doesn't hit as hard when it's like we've got 5 guys who are the protagonists, or we've got 5 guys who are the pirates who are hanging at who are the comic relief characters or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's I remember they did it a couple of years ago.
5 clowns, just one.
I remember they did it a couple of years ago, which I thought was really fun. They I think Worlds did. They hired the animation team behind Avatar: The Last Airbender, and they had their own intro, and the way they did it was, I think each team had their own like star player, like their own ace player, and that's
Right.
the player that they used in the intro for each team, basically. And they had each player represented by like their main hero in League of Legends, like Blitzcrank or Lee Sin or whatever, and it was really cool. So they had that. That's yeah, it's definitely something that I miss in StarCraft, and
That's a really
Mhm.
cool way of doing it. I would criticize it for being like, well, you're just showcasing the star guy, but you have a whole team. I would criticize
Yeah.
it for that, but that's the exact same thing that WTL did, and I liked it when
Yeah.
WTL did that. So I would be a hypocrite if I were to
True.
criticize LCK for doing something like that.
True. So yeah. Once again, it's cool to hear, and maybe one day we'll get that back, whether it's in StarCraft or in other esports as well. Like the intros always had a lot of potential, and were really hyped back in the day.
Yeah, I think GSL kind of continued that tradition. Obviously, there were a couple of years and a couple of seasons where it was a lot more basic compared to what they had previously, where it would just be, all right, we'll have two guys staring at each other with the trophy in between the two of them. But I feel like usually you can count on, you could usually count on GSL for creating intros that were at least interesting. I remember every single season for quite a while they would have a theme and they would dress the players up differently. I remember one season the theme was K-drama, and that led to a lot of memes.
Yeah,
Or like high school, boarding school, or whatever it was called. They had them all dressed up like boarding school kids.
My favorite was still all the SSL intros, still the best. That's the production team for SSL was, in my opinion, at least always greater than GSL, and it's a shame that we don't have them anymore. But for the few years that we had SSL, definitely like the best intros, like the best thematics as well. If you remember, that was the one with I think it was season 2, because in season 1 I think Dark was the champion, and then coming into season 2, I think they had the setup where they had Dark on the throne.
2017. Oh,
I can't quite recall, but Dark, he was like on a throne, and you had everyone like around him, like vying for it. Like it was so cool.
It was like King of the Hill, yeah.
Yeah, it was like King of the Hill sort of thing, and they
like,
portrayed
how
Dark
do we
like
take down the king.
it was portrayed in such a cool way, and that's still like burned into my memory, like that intro, and yeah, definitely one day again for EWC.
EWC.
Copium.
Yeah.
But that led us into, I mean, we already spoke about Heart of the Swarm and Swarm hosts. Likewise, there was a bit of a discussion talking about Pro League and talking about fan clubs. I think this is where he started
in the fan clubs as well.
Yeah, I think he started discussing about like the fandom, and that was really fun to hear once again. For whatever reason, it's something that hadn't really been spoken about in the previous interviews. But talking about how, especially in Pro League, there were some big groups when it came, like the fan clubs were definitely much so a thing for each team, for KT, for SKT. You'd often get like, like massive cheers and cheerfuls going on in the crowd. Players that would often get like cakes and stuff for their birthdays. Like you'd get like a lot of gifts given as well. Like there was the fandom for StarCraft 2 was very real, especially back in the Pro League days.
I want to get into this because this is a very interesting topic that I'm glad that was brought up in the interview. But first off, can we coin the term fearfuls? And they're basically signs that are the opposite of cheerfuls.
Oh no!
Where you're rooting against one of the players there. That's that to me. Growing up playing sports and being like having it instilled where it's like you never jeer for anybody, no matter how much you hate them. You don't jeer in public. You jeer in private with your friends, but not in public. That goes against that part of me, but at the same time, I'm like, that could be so spicy. There's so much potential for fearfuls in a crowd. No. My primary school PE teacher would whoop me if I brought that up this idea.
No. Not like this. But it's something that I can't speak to in what kind of presence it exists anymore in StarCraft 2, to be honest, just because, again, the Korean viewer base has shrunk significantly over time, and a lot of these fan groups, I'm sure, aren't really a thing anymore, just because a lot of them were based on the teams. Like, true, but a lot of them were based on the teams, right? A lot of them, you have fan clubs for Samsung, fan clubs for CJ Entis, for KT Roaster, and it was very organized as well. He was kind of relating them to Korean fan groups and Korean fan clubs, and I remember for at least the Korean side of things. Sorry, K-pop is what I wanted to say. For the K-pop side of things, like you'd get your own membership card, like you had to register. There were proper websites. There were fan
That
groups and fan meetups
as
to actually, like bring everyone together. Like it was
and
very well organized when it comes to that sort of thing.
and for anybody watching who is wondering, yes, this is the only reason why Light is allowed to have VIP at the end of his name is because he is
True.
a card-carrying member of the Big Bang.
I do have a
Big
card.
Bang
Actually.
fan club. Yeah. If he didn't have that card, he would not be allowed to have VIP at the end of his name.
Exactly, I'd be sued.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be able to. But yeah, like that was definitely a prevalent thing back in the day, back in Heart of the Swarm, Kesper era of StarCraft, and it's something that we kind of took for granted, and we always got glimpses of it.
Yeah.
Whenever it'd be like someone's birthday, like they'd post on social media, like everything that they'd gotten for it, like really heartfelt, like messages and fan art, and yeah, it was a big thing back in the day.
I feel like we kind of saw the evolution of it in real time, so to speak, where you were talking about back in the day. And keep in mind, this was before like social media or anything was really huge. So as Chobra was pointing out, you would go to like a forum, an online fan forum, and then you would be like, okay, here's my number so we can text and coordinate this stuff.
Mhm.
Which nowadays, that sounds terrifying. You putting your phone number out in public like that. That is not something that I don't think... That's something that we're trying to discourage nowadays, but yeah, it was a different era back then in the early 2000s. So yeah, we would have all of this going on, and like you were mentioning, back then, even though there were a couple of individual players who had more of a share of the fan base, usually it was surrounded around teams. And then StarCraft 2 later down the line in the Kesper era, it was a similar-ish thing, but you could definitely see that it was changing a little bit, so that yes, you still had fans of the team, but they also gravitated towards specific players themselves. And I think that's just because by the time StarCraft 2 came along, contracts weren't as ironclad, so to speak. So there wasn't usually a guarantee that this player, if they signed to KT at the start of the year, they were still going to be in KT the next year, or things like that. And then you move to the post-Kesper era, where it's like, yeah, nobody's a fan of teams anymore, and they just cheer for the players that they like.
Yeah, kind of. Like for the Kesper era, like there were definitely players that were ingrained to teams. There was some
True.
switching for the most part. Like KT
team.
had, Flash, you had
Yes.
Hero had CJ Antis, Solar had Samsung. Like these ace players were very
Yep.
much so ingrained with their teams, sort of thing. And I think Tasa spoke about it alongside Chobra. They both kind of went down this line of thinking about how like they were asked like, why is it that like there were so many like fangirls and like these fan groups surrounding these teams, and they were talking about how like they had like a similar kind of a similar vibe to these K-pop groups, where you had like a group or a quote unquote team of players, and you could be a fan of and you'd be a fan of all of them, and there was something like a little bit more enamoring with the idea of cheering for a team or a group of players, more so than just the individual player. And that's seen a lot in Korean music as well, where individual Korean singers are nowhere near as popular as groups, whether it's K-pop girl groups or boy groups. And I think Chobra, he went into League of Legends from there, talking about how like that's also why like it was a bit of a seamless transition into like League and Valorant and stuff like that, where you have like these teams of players.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, especially for a team game, that's a little bit more. It's a little bit more important to have the whole team together and more cohesive, like that, instead of just having 5 all-star players who hate each other. that I think is a pardon me, but that I think is gonna be the tell, or that the way that you've made it as a group is if you can find fan fiction written about you on like Wattpad or whatever. I wonder if I looked at. I'm sure there's some League of Legends Wattpad fan fiction out there, but I wonder if I could. But I wonder if I could find some for like the SKT Player House fanfic starring Sue and Classic, supporting casts I Love Oov and Innovation and whatever.
I'm pretty sure there was some fan fiction on Team Liquid. I'm pretty sure that existed.
I'm pretty sure there was, yeah. I'm pretty sure TL, the TL writers, wrote
Yeah,
a bunch of
Wax.
fanfics as well. Yeah, Wax. I didn't want to call it anyone specifically, but
God no. But yeah, it was just interesting to hear that for whatever reason, I don't think they necessarily gave too much a reason for it, but for whatever reason, the idea of cheering for and being fans of a group is very much so a thing in Korean society, even now to this day. I think Taste was saying like that he didn't
well,
fully get it,
it
but it's something that did spread internationally, which is why
well
K-pop as a
you
concept became more popular worldwide.
yeah, you say that, but if you look at a lot of sports in general,
Hmm.
in a
True.
lot of other countries, it's a lot more common that people
Mhm.
cheer for the team first and foremost, and then they cheer for specific players that they like, whether it's in
Yeah, yeah.
basketball or football or hockey or stuff like that. And I mean, especially in the US, from what I understand about US sports, the home team is what you root for every single time, no matter how badly they suck. If you're from New York, you're cheering for the New York Knicks, no matter how often they let you down.
Uh-huh. There you
And
go.
I know that it's a similar thing in the UK as well. I'm not sure about Australia, and obviously here in Singapore we only have one city, so it's kind of hard to get excited for regional for like the hometown team when there's literally only one. But
Yeah.
yeah, in the UK, that's also really big in soccer. If you're from East London, you're going to be supporting Arsenal no matter what. If you're from the Midlands, you're going to be supporting whatchamacallit. What's the name of that team? Something United. You're going to be cheering for them no matter what.
Manchester.
Manchester United, no matter
There you
what.
go.
Yeah, if you're from Manchester, you're going to be cheering for Manchester United. You're going to be jeering against Manchester City every single
Mhm.
time. If you're not
There you
from
go.
Manchester, though, it's the opposite. You're going to be cheering for Manchester City every time.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's also why it's
Terrible
interesting when
team.
it. I wouldn't know. Oh my god, you have to calm down.
Hate them so
You're like,
much.
yeah, they
They have
suck.
so
Oh my
much
god.
money and they just fucking buy everyone. Fucking buy everyone. They don't
God,
care
no.
about developing the home ground talent.
I think that's one of the more interesting things about esports is that doesn't really exist as much, right? Like there is no home field advantage, at least when it comes to, talking about something
Because
like,
they're all in Korean esports, definitely
yeah,
because they're all based in
yeah,
Seoul.
exactly.
You're not
Like
gonna have your
there's,
Daegu team as much as Crank wants to create it as much as
yeah,
possible.
yeah.
I think there is a little bit of pride when you have a really good player from who's from a city that's not from Seoul. I know that's why
Mhm.
Gumiho and DRG are really celebrated in their hometowns because they were the ones who were champions but weren't like growing up in Seoul or weren't
Mhm.
did still live in their hometown for the most part while they were competing.
Hmm. For sure, for sure. So yeah, just something interesting to think about when it comes to like
Which
the like basically fandoms in StarCraft or in esports.
although I will say Overwatch actually tried to have something like that, but it kind of fell on its nose because one, obviously Overwatch League isn't doing too well nowadays viewership wise, but also even though they would have their London team and they would have their Toronto team or whatever, I mean just using the London Spitfire I think is what they were called. For the majority of that team's existence, they did not have a single player from the UK on that team. So even though they
I
were
think
called London Spitfire, it was always either Koreans or, yeah, mostly Koreans or from other places.
I think that's a good example of not understanding the how the fandom works to the
Yeah,
extreme, where it's like where they tried to construct like, oh no, yeah, this is like the Australian team. It's like no one's from Australia. It's like what's going on here? Like what's it's representing that like region in name only and only in name. So
yeah.
it's kind of a weird approach there that they did take. Um, but that finally led into, at least when it comes to the first part, that did finally lead into talking about BlizzCon. Talking about BlizzCon, of course, Shobo was able to host a BlizzCon as well. And it definitely did feel really nostalgic talking about it again. And talking about how BlizzCon was a celebration of all Blizzard titles,
Yep.
and because of that, you would often get fans, people filling the
That
stadium, people filling the dome, watching StarCraft esports, and you'd actually be able to drag in fans of Warcraft or fans of
yep.
Diablo, fans from all around Blizzard, and they all be able to like celebrate it together as one sort of thing, more so than just having like a specialized one-off event for only one esport.
Absolutely. Especially later down the line when Hearthstone esports became a thing. As much as I have my opinions on Hearthstone as a competitive game, uh, yeah, when that started getting involved, when they started incorporating more titles into the mix, or more titles into competitive titles, I should say, into the mix, and sometimes it got a little bit messy. 2019 was definitely when they still had Heroes Global Championship, when they still had Overwatch World Cup, well, obviously WCS StarCraft, and also the Hearthstone Global Championship. It got kind of messy, but on other there were a couple other years where they were able to figure things out, where they were able to schedule things smoothly. And yeah, I remember, I think it was 2017 or 2018, where once WCS ended, I immediately tuned in to Overwatch World Cup, and then I watched Overwatch World
Mhm.
Cup, and that was great. And then once that ended, I immediately tuned into the Heroes Global Championship, and that was an interesting year for Heroes. Let me just put it that way. Not a
I mean,
great
they
year,
all.
but interesting.
I mean, they all fed into each other. I think I remember potentially a year where Overwatch League. I think they finished like maybe earlier than StarCraft, and they rated like the
Yeah,
StarCraft like stream,
yeah, that was really
like
cool.
the
Let's see.
yeah, like again, like it was a way that they could like bolster each other or feed into each other as well. And this actually, now that I
It,
think about it, this would have been an interesting thing to have spoken about. Something that they never touched was like the COVID era of StarCraft and how that
yes.
killed BlizzCon. Like BlizzCon is no longer a thing. One, because of COVID, but even afterwards it never came back. And how that did deal, I would assume, a big blow here, not just to StarCraft, but to all of Blizzard esports,
It
because again, it just takes that big convention, that big celebration away from all the titles.
exactly, and I'm just gonna echo something that I think Jesse Cox mentioned a long, long time ago. If there's no such thing as somebody who is just a fan of Warcraft or just a fan of StarCraft or just a fan of
Mhm,
Hearthstone or anything like that. This would have been like 2014, 2015, 2016 era. So yeah, it's
mhm,
definitely very different now. But back then, it was you were a fan of Blizzard in general.
mhm.
If you played one Blizzard game and then a new one was coming out, you would at the very least check it out. And if it wasn't your thing, it wasn't your thing. But you would at least give it that benefit of the doubt, and you would at least give that a shot. It's part of the reason why, even though Heroes of the Storm maybe never really broke into the big uh, overall mainstream audience that they wanted to, there's a reason why Blizzard fans specifically love it, even if they don't like playing it. They just like the lore. They just like seeing all these characters interacting with one another. And after a while with and again, BlizzCon was meant to be that big celebration of all Blizzard games, and all Blizzard universes, whether it was Warcraft, Diablo, or StarCraft. Those were, I mean, the only ones for a very long time. But then sometime in the mid 2000s, they would be like, okay, we don't have this much to say about this specific franchise, so we'll still have something for it, but we're not really gonna highlight it or anything like that. And then later down the line, as you were mentioning the COVID era, there are now straight up Blizzard cons where, I mean, StarCraft is missing. I don't think we've had. No, yeah, we've had one BlizzCon, I think, in 2020. No, not 2020, a little bit before that, where Diablo was just straight up missing.
Mhm.
Where you would have one specific franchise where they're like, we don't have anything to say about it, and we don't have any news or anything down the line or in development for it. And in the past, they would at least have like, here's the art panel, here's a bunch of people who are fans who did a bunch of fan art, you can buy prints of them, or here's like interviews with the original Diablo 2 devs or whatever like that. But yeah, then later down the line they were like, you know what, if we have nothing to say, we have nothing to say, let's not even bring it up.
Yeah, I mean that was specific for Diablo, where there was that one year, as you mentioned, that I think they had one panel, if that.
Yeah,
That was of course before Diablo 4 came out. That was before all of
yeah,
that. That was during the period between Reaper of Souls, and I think this was even before the proper release of
Immortal,
the mobile game,
the mobile game.
that Diablo released. But yeah, as you mentioned, like it is a
I
shame
mean,
that it never made its return. BlizzCon, I mean,
yeah,
um,
in
without it, yeah, it does feel like there's a big gap. Not even just for like StarCraft esports, but in general here for all the other titles.
yeah, I mean, we're talking a lot about StarCraft. Obviously, this is a StarCraft show, but also I would also say heroes, right? In the past, in BlizzCon, even if they didn't really have much to say, they would be like, okay, here's a new character that we're planning to put out. It's very gimmicky, which is why we saved it for BlizzCon specifically to see what's happening. But yeah, you don't see heroes at BlizzCon anymore. You don't really see StarCraft at BlizzCon anymore. Nowadays, we're seeing Diablo because Diablo 4 is out, and obviously they wanted to generate hype for it, and they want to also celebrate it quite a bit. But I'm personally feeling kind of pessimistic on that as well. I'm kind of waiting to see which is the year that Blizzard forgets about Diablo once again.
I don't think that's gonna happen anytime soon, at least until Diablo 4 dies out a little bit more. But yeah, like if you remember when the keys to like StarCraft 2 esports were initially handed over to ESL, if you remember originally, and again this is before COVID, before everything locked down, initially Blizzard said that they were going to have like these like show matches and still StarCraft esports at BlizzCon. If you remember, that was the plan. They were going to have show matches. They were going to have their own invitational, most likely as well, just to feature the game. That was the plan coming into 2020, and then of course, COVID hit. You know, BlizzCon, went on a extended hiatus for many years, and then after it came back, like it never came back with StarCraft 2, right? As you mentioned, which is a shame, and don't know if that's ever gonna happen again, unfortunately. Same with like Overwatch or Heroes of the Storm. But yeah, we can always be hopeful when it comes to its return. But
now that you mention it, I feel like Overwatch is also on a timer over there at Blizzard. Because, in the past, they would at least every BlizzCon, they would be like teasing the PvE mode and be like, you can play a sneak peek of some of the levels. And then now that they've announced that that's not going to be a thing, I guess they can do character reveals at BlizzCon for Overwatch, but it's not the most. It's not as exciting as full-on new content.
For sure. As that, I believe, wrapped up the discussion for the first parts of the Choba interview. I think the final thing they spoke about was was Archon mode. I think the last Choba event that he attended was the Legend show matches
and how
Archon.
Big Blizzard was like really trying to push Archon mode, and getting MVP and Boxer in one team versus Nesty and Yellow in another team to have that Archon show match and be like, guys, this is how you play StarCraft if you're afraid of laddering in 1v1. Now it's 2v2, except one job.
Yeah, it is.
Go anywhere.
Yeah, it's a shame that they stopped promoting it. Personally, I do feel like there was a lot of potential with Archon mode, and it could have been so much more than it was. But unfortunately, they didn't push it.
Yeah. Well, they pushed it really hard, but the other perspective of that is, it's something else that people say, hindsight's 2020, is that maybe they shouldn't have pushed Archon mode that hard and instead pushed the co-op mode. If they did want a less stressful version of StarCraft, because that is what more people gravitate towards as opposed to Archon itself. But I can definitely see where you're coming from. Archon, very similarly to how team games have a different meta to 1v1. Archon mode also has a little bit of some different strategies that just flat out you cannot pull off in 1v1, and certain things that, if you were to do it in 1v1, it would be criticized as being inefficient. In Archon, it's actually better, and obviously vice versa as well.
Yeah, I would have said, again, outside of that introduction year of Archon mode, they never had, I don't know, another official Archon mode tournament. Not even league, but even just show matches, right? Just have a show match at your WCS or at your DreamHack, at your IEM, just to make sure that people are aware of it. Same with 2v2, for example, as well.
What they should have done is gotten players who not necessarily hate each other, but yell at each other a lot into Archon, and then also have a mic in the booth while they were playing. So, get Ryung and Zest in an Archon team versus Maru and Bjorn, and just have them yell at each other the entire time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we got a little bit of that when it came to the WTL 2v2 show match that they had, right? The big tournament that they had, and we got to see those interactions. We got to see players be friendly with each other and all that stuff. That's it's crazy to think about, but that's almost untapped potential that was never really invested into. Right? 2v2 fell by the wayside real quick for esports.
By the way, speaking of Archon mode, I just want to bring up because I've seen a very interesting initiative lately where people decided to organize just laddering session for Archon, where like essentially they just said like on this day at this time we're all gonna be laddering as long as anybody wants to, and yeah, that's one way to find ladder games for Archon because it's not very popular mode unfortunately.
Yeah, like the
Takes
consensus
quite a
is a lot
while,
of people.
to find a match.
A lot of people just don't even know that Archon mode has a ladder, right? Like that's how little was pushed and how little was promoted, unfortunately. So it is a mode that just is just kind of in the ether at the moment. But yeah, it's really cool that they're pushing that initiative to run these big ladder sessions, to actually have matches to find. Otherwise, you just can't find any.
Yeah. One final thing about part one, as it seems like we're maybe wrapping it up and going into part two, is Chobra at one point kind of mentioned that specifically about the female participation. He said that after a while, the organizers themselves realized, wait a minute, the people playing these games aren't bad looking. We got to promote them, and I feel like I need that for me.
What does that mean? What do you mean by that? No.
I need someone to push my not bad lookingness.
Okay. We'll get you your fan group. We'll get it done, Yako. We'll get it done. Let's go. For sure. That led us into part two. It led us into a discussion that, for whatever reason, was touched on briefly by other interviewees, but they never really went too in depth regarding match fixing. They spoke about, of course, like the match fixing scandals, and for whatever reason, like it was the Choba interview where they actually delved into it a little bit more so than the others.
Well, I think it's one thing specifically, and it's because Chobra is involved in other esports as well, and is also very up to date over what goes on. And I will say this, I appreciate this greatly from Chobra, because it was a suspicion that I and many other people had, but I'm glad to hear somebody confirm my suspicions, which is they were talking about match fixing scandals in StarCraft versus Counter-Strike, and how in StarCraft, match fixing basically killed the scene. Specifically in Korea, it killed the scene. It made sponsors kind of drop the game entirely and not want to get involved anymore, and it kind of killed the scene. Versus in Counter-Strike, where a couple years back, or I think 10 years back at this point, that was a huge match fixing scandal where iBuyPower had a team, and they were also the organizers of a match, and they were trying to get their own team to throw the games and to fix the match for betting. And that was a huge scandal, as I think it was the biggest one in Counter-Strike at that point. And then we find out that the bans were all temporary. iBuyPower, I don't think, are allowed to organize games anymore, and I don't think they're allowed to own a team anymore, but they are still allowed to sponsor Counter-Strike tournaments and Counter-Strike events. There have been a couple of tournaments after that scandal where the players were playing on iBuyPower PCs, so that was a whole thing, and it didn't seem like as big of a deal. And Chobra, again, kind of confirmed what we all suspected. It kind of comes down to the fact that the Western audience just doesn't really care about gambling or match fixing and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean it's
whereas it's a lot more taboo in Korea and in mostly Korea, Asia overall. Gambling is considered a pretty serious vice, but Korea especially, it's very, very taboo.
Yeah, I think Choba kind of missed one of the big points when it comes to how big match fixing was for StarCraft, and you kind of alluded to it yourself. I don't think Choba really brought it up too much, but as the fact that StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2 are very much so like Korean esports, like they're very much more ingrained. Right. Like CS:GO is not really a thing in Korea. Like CS:GO is like not.
They
really
had a
popular.
knockoff Counter-Strike that they played in Korea for a long time.
That's what I mean. So they would rather play other FPS knockoff games than CS:GO or than CS. Like CS is not really.
They would rather play the pay to win. The pay to win. What should we call it? Blackshot, I think is what it's called.
yeah, like for whatever reason, CS:GO never really took off in like the East, right? Like in the Asia region. So because of that, uh, something like match
Which
fixing and betting as well, there's a very different perspective on it because it is illegal, straight up illegal in Korea,
yeah,
right? Like a lot of these players, they weren't just fined, but they went to jail and stuff like that. When it comes to life, for example, like it was a much bigger
mhm.
deal because of that. When it comes to something like CS:GO, they don't have that kind of like quote unquote weighing them down or lording over their
it,
shoulder. Like they don't have that perspective on it as much.
it's kind of funny hearing it from Chobra, who obviously has a perspective of these two regions and describing it as in Korea, gambling and match fixing especially, that's some or gambling specifically, that is you don't want anybody to find out that you're a gambler. You'll like get ostracized for it, uh, or potentially have worse consequences on you. Whereas in the West, and especially in the US, people are like, "Yeah, I shouldn't gamble, but I'm gonna bet anyway. I shouldn't do
Well,
this,
it's
but yeah,
yeah. Well, gambling is a lot more accepted, right? Like it's very much so accepted. Like especially, I think they spoke about like how there's like gambling sponsors for the Super Bowl, right? For example,
yeah,
right? Like that's like gambling is
yeah,
very
advertise
normal.
now in the
Yeah,
US.
it's normalized for regular sports, right? Like it kind of one comes with the other almost. And because CS:GO has a lot of gambling when it comes to like skins and when it comes
Yep,
to just there's just so much more
right.
gambling
That
like also endemic to it. Mhm,
yeah, that was actually also another really good point you brought up that I kind of forgot until you brought it up again. It's that
mhm,
yeah, the whole loot box system in
mhm,
CS:GO kind of primed a lot of the player base to kind of I don't want to say primed, but kind of led to this style of thinking that you're describing. That yeah,
mhm.
it's not great, but you know, if it was really bad, then there would probably be regulation on it. Which, as we know nowadays, that's not really the case. I mean, even the EU is having trouble. The EU is trying to regulate loot boxes in video games, but that's not really going. That's not really going anywhere for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's just it's right. It's like it's just a very different outlook on the two games and a very different perspective as well. And something that does ring true
It
is as you mentioned the international audience. Something that would bother a lot of I remember bothers me as well. In the years preceding what happened with
yeah,
Life, you'd often get people coming into Twitch chat be like, oh, like why isn't Life
what's a
back? Like
big
why isn't he still
deal?
playing?
Like, yeah,
Where's yeah, exactly. But again, a lot of that is because of how serious that is in Korea, right? Because it
right.
is very different there, where gambling is illegal. Like you mentioned, how like how if you're in Korea, you can't like admit to gambling. Well, straight up, like you can't gamble in Korea. Like
You
you have
can,
to
yeah.
um definitely jump
Used
through
to
hoops to do that.
used to not be allowed to gamble in Singapore either, but then now you can if you pay a fee.
There you go.
Yeah, it
So
very
mhm,
very a very Asian thing, I think, to have that very strong stance against gambling or to view gambling as this really really serious vice.
mhm.
Nowadays, yeah, you get the ads all the time, especially around festive season, where people like to even friendly gambling amongst relatives. You get PSAs and ads all the time here, where it's like, think about what you're doing before you start gambling. Don't go to your son and say, "Hey, son, I put all your college fund on Germany to win the World Cup. Uh, so let's see if you have a future." And then, oh well, Germany won. Well, this PSA backfired.
Yeah. It's just a very different culture, right? Like very different
Yeah.
culture around the esports, like specifically, which is I guess interesting to look
Esports,
at, right?
sports
Where it's
betting,
like yeah,
and
where these are like
it,
international games, but despite that, like they're perceived in very different ways.
yeah. Because I will say another thing, just adding to this discussion a little bit. I feel like with sports betting in general, I mean, it's very taboo because obviously it's illegal in most of Asia. But I think a big part of that tabooness is also the fact that when you say sports betting here, people immediately think horse racing specifically, which has its
Mhm.
own stigma. I think when people think of horse racing, they think of the mafia and stuff like that. So I guess that's another element to why sports betting is more of a big deal here compared to in the West.
Mm. Yeah. And I guess it's kind of weird to see how different these esports can be. Like I think even like Richard Lewis, because he's a lot more ingrained in Counter Strike. Like
Yeah.
he's even alluded to the fact that like match fixing is still happening. Like it's still very much still happening. It's something that's very difficult to keep track of, or very difficult to catch players on as well. And even then, like, you know, you could argue that like the viewer base doesn't really care as much. So there's definitely a lot happening there. But yeah,
And
it
if the
is
viewer base
in a
doesn't
way.
care, the sponsors probably won't care. So
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about. Like from the soccer perspective, where we're like, mate, like one big moment, like with whether it came to Savior in Brood War or Life, and I guess Prime as well in SC2, and that kind of destroyed Korean esports. Um, but at the same time, Korean esports is also that much more important to us, more so than these other esports, right? Um,
yeah,
yeah, for sure.
yeah.
And that did end
And
up leading. Oh, go on.
I was just gonna say that, and to anybody who might suspect that, because I feel like this is still a really popular narrative nowadays, which was the idea that Keswa was looking for any excuse to drop StarCraft 2, and they just kind of
Mm.
glommed, and they just immediately picked. They just decided that the match fixing was going to be their excuse. That I don't think is true at all,
Mm.
and kind of supporting evidence for that, I would say, is that StarCraft 2 still had really good viewership compared to a lot of the other smaller games that are still on Kespa, that despite not doing anywhere near the numbers of StarCraft 2, domestically, in Korea specifically, are still getting investment and are still getting sponsors. So things like Kart Racer and stuff like
Mhm.
that, the smaller esport titles. It wasn't.
Yeah.
You could argue that there wasn't going to be this decline in StarCraft 2 esports in Korea anyway, but there's no. I don't think you can really argue against the fact that it was match fixing that killed it.
Yeah, this is also why I wish that this question was also probed a little bit more on Crank and maybe some of the other Koreans as well for their own greater perspective, because I think whenever they were asked it was a little bit more surface level, or maybe it was more discussing about the outcome, like the aftermath of the match fixing, less so like the reasoning behind it, or I should say kind of like the reaction from the Korean fan base, from the Korean community. I don't think we got too in depth when it came to those interviews, where it would have been really good to have heard a little bit more from that, especially from Crank as well,
Yeah.
just because I know he has spoken out about it before. But yeah, I would echo that. Would definitely agree when it comes to what happened with Caswell, what happened with Pro League and all that, which is definitely a shame looking back on the
Yeah.
history of StarCraft. And I'm sure Zomagub is going to be delving into it a lot more when it comes to the documentary that she's putting together.
Yep. And that's kind of like the black stain, right, of Korean esports or
Mhm.
the Korean StarCraft esports. So yeah, I don't think you could really gloss over it.
Mhm. For sure, for sure. There was a brief like discussion afterwards, if you remember, with Choba talking about um, Korean dominance. I think it was
Hmm.
discussing how like it isn't just in esports, but in a lot of different aspects of
Yes.
Korean culture. How like they have this grind set mentality where
And
once they find something, they like iterate upon iterate, and they perfect it and they grind it, and that's why they can excel in certain ways. But at the same time, this also kind
I
of like stems like the more creative aspect of things as well.
and I gotta say, because he was talking specifically about architecture and how there's like
Mhm.
a really prominent Korean
And music.
architect who was, and music as well. But yeah, he was talking about architecture and music, and he was talking about
Mhm.
how specifically there was this one really prominent Korean architect who said that he hates teaching Korean students or something like that. I don't think he went that far, but he was saying something along the lines of he felt that Korean society overall kind of quashes creativity and creates kind of encourages people to just be more cautious, and if somebody else has figured out that something works, you just do that over and over and over again. I gotta say, it felt a little heartwarming to hear that wasn't just that wasn't just a Singapore thing, but then
Mhm.
half a second later I was like, oh, we're all fucked. That's sad for all of us.
Yeah, it was
But
really
yeah,
interesting to hear, right? Go on.
yeah. So I was just gonna say, again, talking about the interview itself, he was saying how the way he put it, he's the one Korean who always cheers against Korean dominance and who always wants to see more creativity. He finds that the other scenes and other regions tend to be a lot more creative when it comes to their gameplay, as opposed to Koreans who will find something that's already working well and then just grind away at it until they have it down to a science, and that can be very, very boring. And I think overall, I tend to agree when it comes to the esports side and StarCraft as well. I think a lot of the most creative players that I can think of probably came out of North America, Mexico, and the US, especially. A couple from our own region, Southeast Asia. Shout out to Mio Micah.
Ooh.
A couple from EU. I will say that there are some very creative Korean players, though. I'm thinking, your Shins, your Rogues, your SOSs, and
Gumiho.
stuff like that. Gumiho as well, yeah. But I think there's a reason why, with the exception of Rogue, and I guess SOS as well. I was gonna say, with the exception of a handful of them, they don't really win too often. But then I was like, well, actually, Rogue won a lot, and SOS also won a lot, and Gumiho
Gumiho
has
won a
some really
GSL.
strong titles. He won a GSL,
Yeah.
and he won 2 Home Story Cups. And then also you have Shin is probably the one who's still waiting. Dark, I guess you can describe as a very non-standard player as well. So there are creative Koreans, but yeah, I have to agree. Overall, it feels like the Kespa environment and the Korean culture, also kind of pushes up and coming players to kind of this mindset of just stick to what works, and then just stick to what works and then just perfect it, essentially.
Yeah, and I mean, it led to a lot of success for those players, of course. I mean, we spoke in previous editions about like the Korean like team house environment and that grind set environment as well. That I guess is not just
Sometimes it would
applicable
actually
to.
be penalized if you wanted to be more, if you wanted to go off track a little bit. Like coaches would actually scold you. We'd be like,
Yeah,
what do you mean you're trying to do this? Just do this one build over and over again.
yeah, but and we saw a lot of examples of that when it comes to a little bit later. I mean, there are plenty of examples of Koreans actually reaching out to foreigners to actually get inspiration or to get builds. Like, yeah, infamously, well, it was Cats, right? Like Cats, he would give a lot of builds to DRG and to Sue as well. Like he would kind of come up with these builds, he'd give them to them, and then they would refine it themselves, right? But like that more creative aspect, the initial spark, the initial build would typically come from outside of things, whether it's from players like Cats, Haas as well. Haas would also come up with builds, and then Koreans would see that, then latch onto that when it comes to some of the European players as well. So we would see that come into swing, and yeah, it was interesting hearing that
Stefano was
from
definitely a player from the EU that a lot of Koreans had to take notice of and had to realize, wait a minute, this is a good build. I need to do nothing but build roaches.
Like you can just keep making it's crazy. Oh my god, just keep making. Okay, let's go. But I think there's a lot of examples throughout the history of StarCraft where that was the case, right? Where you'd have Koreans be inspired by those outside of the region, and then kind of like perfect that instead. I think they were discussing that and talking about how eventually foreigners would overtake them. They didn't really bring it up too much, but part of that I still do think is because Kesper team houses died out, so kind of like the rate of improvement, rate of progression decreased. But at the same time, like we also have to give credit because even though that's true, like that's even more impressive that we'd have foreigners excel without that environment as well, right? Like Serral, Raynor, Clem, they never got that grind set team house environment, and they still were able to improve the way that they did.
Yeah, Serral especially, because like Clem and Raynor, they did have a little bit of time in team house environments. Raynor was the youngest member of My Insanity for a very long time, and spent a few years, so I spent a decent number of time in the Swiss house. Obviously, Clem has Liquid Boot Camp and things like that, but Serral not once ever stepped foot in the team house. Never went to Korea. Never went to. I mean, he was on ENTS for the longest time, and he was the only player on ENTS, so he wasn't getting invited to boot camps, to TL boot camps or anything like that. Just practice from home. Had a really good studied builds, studied what went well for him, and what analyzed what his strengths were, and then just in a way kind of did the Korean method and just perfected what
Mm.
worked, but not just looking at other people's builds and trying to do that and trying to copy that, but rather just perfecting his own style
On his own, right? Like
on his own.
that's.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously he had like
Well,
practice partners and
uh,
stuff that he'd reach out to, but
a
yeah,
little bit of coaching from his older brother, but
true.
apart from that,
Yeah, true.
he was all on his own.
Mhm. Yeah, and hopefully we get to hear more from that. I would imagine we would specifically when it comes to the European interviews. Remember, Zombergov, she went to Home Story Cup. She conducted
Mhm.
a bunch of interviews there, and it would be interesting to maybe hear that perspective, that like practice mindset from the more foreigner side of things, and kind of contrast that with the Korean side of things as well. I think there's a lot of interesting
I think
like content that can be made there.
I think we'll actually be, or some viewers, I think, will actually be a little bit surprised of how much time a lot of the foreign pros actually did spend in team houses as well. Not quite the same as the Kespa environment, not quite the same as, they live there now and they share a room with somebody else who snores half the night and they can't get any sleep or stuff like that. But yeah, a little bit, yeah, it's a little bit more spacious, some of those foreign team houses. But yeah, a lot of them did have similar-ish environments where they did have a place where they could congregate and could theorycraft together, share ideas and builds, and also practice with each other. So obviously, I'm thinking of the very famous foreigner team house in Korea, where you had a lot of foreign players come down and practicing there. But you also had the Root House
Yeah.
was it in Brazil or somewhere in Latin America. You had
No,
I mentioned the
in
Mainz
America.
and the
America.
the U.S. America. Well, man, they speak
Same thing.
Latin there. They speak enough Latin. They speak Latin there, I'm sure. The Mainz Sandy House, the Liquid Boot Camp House.
Mhm.
So yeah, obviously a very different vibe compared to Kespa, but yeah, I do think a lot of pros overall, the foreign pros, did also benefit a bit from having a little bit of that experience to at the very least be in the proximity, right, of other people who they could who would make sure that they practiced together.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone needs a trigger. Everyone needs.
Everyone needs, yes, undegen them, yes.
Well, let's go. And that led us into the final point of discussion when it came to the interview, which is something that I didn't really think about too much either. I also find it really interesting that it took until now for them to really delve into a little bit more of In Control, I will say. A lot of like Zombigo would often ask a lot of the other interviewees about In Control, and they'd often talk about their own personal experiences with him. I think Chobra, especially because I guess he has experience in other esports, did actually bring up the fact that In Control, Jeff, he had definitely a role that he played in a broadcast, in the show, in the StarCraft esports, that's never really was replaced, never really got filled again, and is definitely a personality type and a character that he hadn't seen himself since then in other esports, whether it's in Dota, League of Legends, or CS:GO.
I think the way Chobra described In Control was if you knew absolutely nothing about a broadcast and you knew absolutely nothing about In Control as well, and if you watched him for the first time, you would think, "What a jackass! Like this guy's like just playing a fool, like doing whatever." But then you look a little bit deeper and you look a little bit into how he was doing things, and he was just kind of pushing the broadcast to see he was just to see the fact that he was basically pushing the broadcast in a certain direction with a lot more finesse and with a lot more care than you might initially suspect.
Yeah, when it comes to his jokes, when it comes to what he would say, and again, it's something that we saw a little bit of. I think Kuro would fondly remember this, but for ANZ Champs, something that we had a lot of fun with, that again, I don't think ever, outside of Jeff, of course, ever was replicated in any of the other esports. Maybe a little bit of the like COVID era StarCraft stuff, a little bit. What I'm referring to is having fun and joking with the production team.
Yeah.
Whether it's the director of the show or producer of the show
People
or
behind the camera.
yeah, or people behind the camera and having that as like a quote unquote
The
like entity,
audio guys. Yeah.
like a character itself as a part of the show, like the production team, right? I remember that was done a little bit during the COVID era because Wardy was handling the production, like he was like basically just streaming and then switching scenes and everything, and sometimes like Kalaris or the other guys would poke fun at that a little bit, but when it comes to like the in-person events, like that was never really done.
Yeah.
Jeff would poke fun at production, at the sound guy, right, at cameras and stuff like that. But no one else would or did do that afterwards.
Yeah. I'm not sure if etiquette is the right word for it, but it's usually the rule for a lot of broadcasts in general, whether it's esports or any kind of live event that you're having, is typically they want the audience to forget about the fact that it is a broadcast, that there are people in production who are mixing the sound levels or they are doing all of this other things and whatever. So I feel like a lot of people who are trained, a lot of talent who is trained to be broadcast talents usually keep that in mind, and they do just kind of minimize it to an extent to try to. And I think Chobra actually talked about it a little bit in the first part of the interview, where he's like, the broadcast wants to create this illusion where they are in the room with you, essentially. And so that's not really something you see too often, but in Control is like, well, you could still remind people that this is a production, that they're not, we can still shatter that illusion, so to speak, but still also create something very entertaining and have fun with it.
Yeah, I mean, because of that, Jeff had a way of like connecting with the audience, connecting with the Twitch chat. If there was ever like an issue, like that everyone was in it together, sort of thing. Like he was able to kind of like break those barriers and kind of like allow that to be, a bit of a different experience. As you mentioned, Choba, he spoke about how like whenever he was on the show, whenever the producers would speak to him, he'd just listen to whatever they had to say. They were like, okay, like I'm here, I'll follow your lead, sort of thing. Whereas Jeff, he would often try to take that away a little bit, or try to do things his own way, and to the benefit of the show, like more often than not. It's
one of those things where somebody like Shobra would, if the director is speaking to the air and being like, do this or do whatever, they would keep quiet, listen, and then bring it up after they were done speaking. If that was happening with In Control, and I think Tasteless does this a little bit to an extent, but not as much as In Control, that he would like have a full-on conversation in front of the camera with the director. He's like, oh, the director, he's telling me to do this and that. Okay, I'll get on that, director. Do you want me to do anything else? The audience, I got the audience listening to you if you want me to tell them anything or stuff like that,
Yeah, because at the end of the day, like, it's a show, and he would want it to be entertaining, right, as well. And it's definitely a different kind of vibe, but definitely something that I had a lot of fun with. I remember for some of the ESL broadcasts for WCS, something that he kept doing was, I don't know if you remember this, but they would have like a replay going, and then they'd be able to draw on the screen about what was happening, and he just for whatever reason,
every single time he would,
and he would just keep drawing just like dicks. Like when talking about like attack pods and attack formations, and then they try to like pan away and stuff like that, and then they bring it back, and then he just keep bringing it back. That was just the ongoing.
He never stopped drawing it. Yeah. By the time they panned the camera back, you would think that he would erase it, and then okay, camera's back on. We had time to draw another penis. No, they would just pan back. And he'd still drawing the same one.
It'd be done in a bit more like a candid way, where he'd be like, yes, okay, so we have two really defensible locations here, and then here, and then right through the center we have this big attack pass that you want to try to push through, and then you'd be like, Kalaris, like, okay, we did panel, we just like Kalaris would be doing like damage control stuff like that, but like I don't know, like have fun with the show, things like of that nature, and it'd always be like a great time whenever Jeff
That's
was
always been
involved.
my motto. You gotta make production sweat a little. If you don't make production sweat a little bit, you're
Uh-huh.
not doing your job as a talent.
Exactly.
Uh huh. Uh
Exactly.
huh.
Mhm.
Oh no. Um, but yeah,
if
it's definitely something that.
if production doesn't send you a PDF of notes with at least 3 pages full of figure out a way to get sound balanced, you're not doing your
Mhm.
job.
Exactly. And
Fix
it
the
was a little
sound
bit.
balance.
It shows like how important In Control was, and also shows how it's a little bit somber to hear that like again it's a personality type that we never quite got again, at least in StarCraft, or it sounds like in other esports as well. Another person to step up and to kind of have that role, which I'm sure is dearly missed.
It
And yeah, never quite
yeah.
got again.
I would 100% say so as well. I would just like to ask for viewers who are involved, very much involved in other esports and stuff like that. I have to wonder a little bit because obviously we're very used to In Control. We love him, and we love that style. But would that translate well to other esport cultures? Is what I'm kind of curious about.
Hmm.
I think so,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's definitely some that I think might not appreciate that style of kind of pushing the line or pushing the boundaries and trying to just kind of push those boundaries. Yeah, I have to wonder if there are any other esports out there that might not appreciate that.
I would say that probably. I mean, Jeff would tone it down for like BlizzCon, right? Like because it's
True.
BlizzCon sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like, and I would imagine that would be toned down for something like EWC in current like esports environments. But like for other
And
events, like I would imagine that it'd be a welcome sight, for other like circuit events and big offline events. Like, uh, as long as it wasn't something like an EWC, like you'd probably be fine doing that. But yeah, it's
and
Mhm.
you just made me really sad once again because I would have loved to hear In Control's thoughts on EWC and the whole EWC situation as well. I'm sure he would find a way. I'm sure he would have a couple of opinions, and he
Mhm.
would definitely find a way to voice them to audiences. And hey, this is a little bit early, but you made me real sad once again because I would have also loved to hear TB's thoughts on EWC and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was the other thing that he spoke about was in a bit of a different way. I think we spoke about Total Biscuit and his own unique, more like WWE like commentator style and how he would construct a show. But Choba he spoke about how Total Biscuit, he was a big figure in gaming in general, right? In
Yeah,
YouTube and in the gaming sphere, in the
just
gaming journalism sphere
yeah,
as well. Mhm.
and I feel like I bring this up every time we talk about TB. TB is the reason I got into StarCraft 2 esports.
Yeah.
That's how big he was in video games overall, in general.
Mhm. For sure. And it's one of those things where many years later, similar to Jeff, like I don't. Maybe I'm just a little bit disconnected, but I don't think there has been really like a quote unquote like replacement, like someone that stepped in to fill those shoes of being like the kind of like video game like critic like
Yeah,
reviewer on YouTube, like similar to
yeah,
that of Total Biscuit again. Um
yeah. I feel like
yeah.
the closest thing nowadays is, I would say Richard Lewis, but obviously Richard Lewis, he has a very different style of analysis and critique. He's a writer, not as
Yeah,
opposed to
he's
a
more of a
broadcaster. So
he's more of a journalist, right? For like, and even
yeah,
then more specialized on esports more so than
true.
Total Biscuit
Yeah,
as like as a general like video game reviewer, right?
yeah. The game
Um
industry as a whole was Total Biscuit's whole thing, whereas Richard
mhm,
Lewis, he has spoken a little bit about like I think loot boxes and stuff like that, but like you said, he is focused more on esports as
mhm,
opposed to games overall. I guess
mhm.
yeah. I guess I'm trying to remember what the preferred first name is nowadays, but I guess Commander Sterling,
Mhm.
host of
Yeah.
Jimquisition, and it has a similar vibe, but doesn't really, not to the same extent. I would say he's yeah,
Mhm.
TB was definitely one of a kind.
For sure. For sure. For sure. And that's kind of where the interview for Choba did end. Of course, asking him what StarCraft means to him, as always. And yeah, I mean, it was great to hear from Tropa once again, despite being away from
And
StarCraft for so long, returning to us.
yeah, and I feel like he gave a very optimistic, but at the same time also felt like a little bit of a cop out answer when
Hmm.
asked, "What is StarCraft's legacy?" And he's like, "Well, when you say legacy, it makes it sound like the game is dead, but the game's not dead, as I just went over in this whole thing." And I'm like, God damn it, Chobra. You knew exactly what you were doing. I missed it at the start because I was like, oh, that's inspiring. But I was like, wait a minute. You didn't answer the question.
Yes, Chobra.
Chobra. Shaking my head, Chobra. But yeah, he was talking about how, there's a lot of things in StarCraft that overall have leaked into gaming as a whole and to esports as a whole. People in League of Legends bring up the NASL sound guy. You ask them, hey, do you know what the origins of that? And they're like, oh no, I just hear that it's a meme that people spread around. Obviously, they was talking about the LOL emote and Total Biscuit as well, how Justin TV eventually became Twitch TV, and how StarCraft 2 was a big part of creating a big part of that transition into something that was less focused on video games initially and then became more focused on video games, and nowadays is still games are at the forefront, but also now they're also doing other stuff, which I don't mind. There's a lot of great cooking streams on Twitch now. But yeah, he was talking about all that, and he was like, but I also think that there's going to be a lot more to come in the future. I'm like, oh, wait, that's not even an answer.
It is very hopeful, and I'll take it for that at
Yeah.
least. But yeah, for sure. It's definitely something that I'm sure Zombigal will get out of some of the other interviewees as well. But yeah, so big shout to Choba for a big two-parter. And I don't know if we actually have any more Korean interviews coming
quite a
up.
few. There are going to be a couple more.
Okay,
I'm not sure if I'm
okay.
allowed to say which one specifically, but I think she said more than 14 interviews were conducted in Korea. I don't know why the number 14 is in my mind, but she did quite a few in Korea. So yeah, there's still a couple to come.
Okay. Definitely something to look forward to. Again, do check out the GLHF YouTube channel for all the previous interviews. There are plenty already on the channel and more to come, so do look forward to it. Hearing from, Brood War, from SC2, and even from outside of StarCraft with Chobra as well, so definitely worth checking out. And finally, we can head into some of the other news in StarCraft in regards to some roster changes. Roster changes that I was not expecting, to be honest. Alien Esports, they're back
Do it
again.
yeah.
Yeah, they're lifting up their roster.
Yeah, kidnapping, probing. No, wait, that's they're getting their alien beams on more people and from
Tractor beams.
Yeah, different regions. Tractor beams. Yeah. So far, Alien Esports they've been mainly focused on the EU region, picking up Aeroc Fire and whatnot. But now expanding a little bit into Latin America with Inexorable.
Yeah, this was a surprising pickup to me, just because Inexorable is a very niche player. He's a very niche player. He's being in the Latin American region, of course, but a bit of a smaller region currently than it used to be. And of course, he's been on the Platinum Heroes for quite some time. Wasn't really expecting him to leave the Platinum Heroes, but did do so. Was picked up by Alien Esports instead. And yeah, Alien Esports quickly becoming almost like the new streamer zone, where they pop up and they actually managed to grab a bunch of players and support them. So yeah,
Aliens
cool
versus streamers. That's a movie to watch.
Oh no, that would not be a good movie.
That would not be a good movie. That would be the streamers just reacting to everything the aliens do. That's
exactly.
That's not the meta anymore.
Oh god. So we did have Inexorable joining Alien Esports alongside the Novak as well.
Could be worse. Could be aliens versus VTubers.
Oh no, I mean I think that would be better actually. Not gonna lie. No. But yeah, the Novak was an interesting one because he isn't a player. He's actually a caster.
Yeah, the Spanish caster for a lot of events. So the official Spanish stream for a lot of events. And when we say Spanish, we mean actual Spanish where they speak with a lisp. So I'm calling out
From
the rest of calling out all of Latin America with that.
Spain. Yes, from Spain, I believe from Spain. So yeah, it's really
España.
again a really interesting pickup, right? It's like for Inexorable, I guess it's a little bit more sense because he does play in a lot of tournaments, but yeah, to reach out to a Spanish caster as well, at least caught me off guard. Caught me off guard.
It's just like Streamer Zone picking up Grant.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Kind of, but sure.
Ish, yeah. I think Grant is the player manager? Question mark.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a player manager, and I believe the Novak is being picked up as a talent.
Mhm.
Or as a broadcast talent.
Yeah. So really interesting acquisitions here, and again, best of luck to Alien Esports. I only hope that they don't grow too much too quickly. Hopefully they temper themselves and they're able to maintain themselves as well. But yeah, regardless, really cool to see that Alien Esports are continuing to invest and support StarCraft.
Yeah. Picking up where a lot of teams kind of left off, which again we've spoken about it a lot. I personally do not blame the team owners at all for investing less in SC2. It just doesn't really make as much monetary sense for them. But so again, I especially the ones who are creating sponsoring these teams out of their own pocket as opposed to getting big investors or sponsors in as well. But I definitely get where they're coming from, and when it comes to investing less. But yeah, I'm glad that we do still have teams like Alien Esports and like Streamer Zone that have somewhat deep enough pockets, shall we say, that they are willing to pick up more and more players.
Yeah, for sure. So great to see new teams popping up or even old teams coming back and reinvesting. What are they investing for? Well, we have some updates in regards to EWC. We actually have multiple updates to this. We have the initial post by Mapu. Of course, there were supposed to be some announced games for EWC, but alas, they were pushed back. They were pushed back once again. This has been happening for the past couple of weeks now, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but people they're getting excited for these announcements, and then they just keep getting delayed. So that has happened once again. Mapu did post about it, but something that did occur a couple of hours ago, actually, less than a day ago, is that there was a clip that was shared around of Rotterdam.
I want to say this though, because yes, that clip is being shared around, and it's titled "Rotterdam confirms EWC." I want to point this out for people who didn't go on the SC Reddit. Rotterdam did clarify in the comments of that clip. He's not officially announcing anything. He's just He's just feeling very, very, very optimistic that there will be some form of StarCraft 2 at EWC.
I thought you were gonna clarify. Rotterdam, he did comment and he did say that it is not the year of the rabbit.
It is not the year of the rabbit. He did also mention that.
Okay.
But that's related to. But he said that it's not the year of the rabbit, but that's only relevant to his tech issues that he's having recently.
I see.
It's the year of the snake now, which apparently snakes eat rabbits, from what I've heard.
They do. But yeah, we're about to
and Roddy
get
is
into
a
that.
rabbit,
And...
as TIL.
Yeah,
he did confirm that for all of us. He is a rabbit.
The clip was shared around in regards to Rotterdam, saying that most likely it is going to be coming. I think a lot of us are pretty optimistic that it would, just because of how successful it was. But I think, as even Rotterdam said in the clip, he's like it just makes sense that it would be one of the announced games, and I would agree, it makes sense. But some things don't make sense. Is that so? Yeah, there's still 5 unannounced games when it comes to EWC. StarCraft should be there, but once again there are delays, and once again we'll have to wait and see what comes.
It was supposed to be 5 today, but it's still 6.
There you
for
go.
the time being.
Smudge. So still yet to have been confirmed.
Yeah, so yet to be confirmed. Although, as some people are pointing out, this does also mean that it's not just StarCraft which is having difficulty. It's not just Blizzard or Microsoft that's having difficulty negotiating things with the EWC. Most likely there are other titles from other. Most likely there are also other titles from other uh, devs and publishers that are still in that negotiation phase.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's one of those things where the problem is that the longer it takes, the less events we're gonna have, right? Like the biggest one, of course, that we
Yeah,
mentioned
and
last week was IM, right? IM Katowice
yep.
coming going at this point, partly
Oh, I think the
because
playoffs
of
are
the
happening this weekend.
yeah, partly because the announcements, right? Like if we could have expedited this a little bit sooner, then maybe we could have squeezed in an SE2 at IM Katowice, but so that's
And
most likely why a lot of people are hoping that it gets announced sooner rather than later.
and I think in the clip itself, Roddy is also saying, I'm really optimistic that StarCraft 2 will be at EWC, but I can't say the same about having a full circuit and other
Hmm.
events.
Hmm. Exactly. That's yet to be announced. Yet to be announced. That leads us into finally some scores, some tournament results that have been coming, and of course, plenty of events have been taking place throughout the course of the week. Shout out to Bratok, but this is not the first event that Bratok has been hosting. In regards to StarCraft Evolution, StarCraft Evolution events.
Ooh.
Bratok has been embracing them for the past, I want to say, couple of weeks now, and was able to host an event, host like almost a team league format, if you will.
Yeah, pseudo team league with also a couple of 2v2s in the mix. Bratok Brute War plus SC2 Race Wars. So,
Hmm.
as the name implies, we had 3 teams of the 3 different races, each team
Hmm.
having 2 players. Team Protoss had, Middle VK actually
Hmm.
participated in this and partnered up with DeWalt for Team Protoss. Milky Cow, and I gotta say, this is a player I'm not familiar with, but I love the name, Wannabe Byun,
Hmm.
did both team up for Team Terran, and then obviously the usual suspects for Team Zerg, Wayne and Young Yakov, did combine their prowess to come in second.
Yeah, Wannabe Björn, we've actually seen him in a decent amount of 2v2 events. I'm sure he's also a 1v1 competitor, but a little bit less successful in that aspect, where we have seen him pair up with some of the other CIS players when playing in these 2v2 tournaments instead. So great to see him here. And as you mentioned, we did have like a bit of a race war with all these players here. We had some pretty interesting results as well. As a reminder, this is StarCraft Evolution, and they even played on some of these older maps as well. They were playing on Fighting Spirit. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
And here's
It's
what I find
crazy.
interesting is that they didn't have it so that the teams themselves swapped between Brute War and StarCraft 2. They each team designated one player to only play Brute War and one player to only play SC2, which
Mm.
an interesting way of going about it. I mean, the matches themselves were still Brute War v SC2, but
Mhm.
with the exception of the I think with the exception of the team the 2v2s, but I could be mistaken there.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, when it comes to the pairings that make sense, Jan Yakov has been playing a lot of StarCraft Revolution, so he was the Brood War player. Milky Cow also playing a lot of StarCraft Revolution, also the Brood War player as well. And then we had DeWalt stepping in as the Brood War player for Team Protoss, so did have them facing off. It looks like we had tied scorelines in round 1 for Terran and Zerg. We had Terran win the 2v2. Zerg is considered to be a little bit weaker in 2v2, so we'll see if they do get some wins there. And Zerg, they actually won round 3. Oh, okay. They won round 3 in the end, taking down Milky Cow and Wannabe Byun.
Oh, yeah, Wayne almost all killed, but then Milky Cow came in, took
Mhm.
him down twice, but then Young Yakov, he was still alive, so was able to take them both down in the end there. So,
Mhm.
yeah, pretty cool. Good for
Yeah,
Wayne.
definitely. That does bring us over to the Zerg versus Protoss. So basically, we had something for every
Yeah.
matchup. For every matchup here, did have something a little bit different. We had a much more dominant showing here from the Zerg side. Part of me
Yeah.
wants to say that, unfortunately, I mean, Middle VK is a great player. DeWalt, I'm less familiar with. It would have been nice if we had, maybe players like
P
some of
Power
the,
or
yeah.
Aimless.
There are definitely more notable Protoss players that could have been chosen here, and I only bring that up just because when I think of the top Zerg players in the CIS region, it is Young Yakov and Wayne, right? Like you
Yeah.
do not get better than that.
I
That's like the best of the best that you can get.
I would say that looking at the participants here, overall, I would say Team Zerg is the
Mhm.
heavy favorite. I'm kind of surprised
Mhm.
that. Well, I say I'm kind of surprised that they ended up losing to Team Terran, but they did have a point calculation system
True.
here, so Yeah, it's not too surprising, but yeah, like you mentioned, much more dominant from Team Zerg this time, and this time Wayne was able to all kill.
Ooh, yeah, he all killed in the third round and in round one. And so Wayne with the carry against Protoss, I should say. And they were, of course, able to win their 2v2 match as well. That led us into the Protoss versus Terran, which was a little more intense, a little more back and forth, at least in the first couple of rounds. But in round three, we saw Milky Cow clean
It,
house. Again, Milky Cow has been on a tear as of late.
yeah, this is the only 2v2 that wasn't the full sweep, so I definitely appreciate
Mm.
that.
True, true. Worth checking out. Definitely worth checking out there. Again, if you want to tune in, check out Bratok on YouTube and Twitch. He has been organizing these on a semi-regular basis. I don't know if he has like a schedule with how regularly he wants to host these. But again, it's been great to see Bratok, for whatever reason, like taking interest in StarCraft Evolution, and in this kind of format.
Well, he's older, so
True.
he's old. So.
Yeah,
That's usually how it goes. You know, when they show interest in StarCraft Evolution, it's like, oh, how old are they? Ah, I see.
You don't have to go at them like that, Jakub. Calm down, Papi. Calm down. Also, you say that young Jakub has been playing Protoss. Just saying. Sorry, has been playing Brood War. Just saying.
Yeah.
But is it young Yakov called old Yakov now?
Yeah,
True.
exactly.
He's 20. He's old.
Yeah. He's gonna need that walking stick real soon.
God day. That will lead us into StarCraft Evolution. SCL number 7 is back, by the way. We have not casted StarCraft Evolution, I should say the league, the StarCraft Evolution League, since early December. That was when the Fall Championship was held. Did go on a big hiatus, now is back, and now is back as a monthly. StarCraft Evolution League used to be a bi-weekly tournament, now has returned in a monthly format instead.
Yeah. A little bit more manageable, I think, for both the players as well as the organizers, and also, but apart from that, I would say that a lot of the format is going to be kept the same. So ideally, we're still going to be having seasonal finals based on the results of the SE Evo monthlies.
Yes, exactly. And also to change the format a little bit as well when it comes to these monthlies, double elimination. They made a double elimination from the quarterfinals moving forward, so now we have extra matches and extra series. It was a long broadcast. Coming into this, and there was some big names stepping into the ring here. Coming into the tournament, my eyes were on the top 4. They were on Classic as the best Protoss in the bracket. They were on Shin as the best Zerg player, Spirit as the best Terran, and my eyes were on 3-Point as well. Those are the players that I was definitely looking forward to seeing. But when it came to the bracket itself and how it unfolded, we did have some crazy results and some crazy upsets.
You weren't looking at Mono?
No.
Mono, who was able to take a game off of Classic?
He did. It was crazy.
With his
crazy.
Brood War, Terran?
Yeah. Cheese the hell out of him. Of course he did.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you mentioned, Homono, he did come out swinging, went to the ace match against Classic in the quarterfinals. I would say upset here from Rumiath. Rumiath is a Korean Zerg player. Rumiath, he mainly competes in StarCraft Evolution, rarely plays in StarCraft 2 tournaments. He took down 3-Point, 2-0, and also forced Classic to the ace match as well.
Yeah, I'm not noticing that.
So a crazy
Definitely
run
a really
there.
good result there, and also messed up a lot of predictions, I would imagine. I see Shin versus 3-Point happening in the lower bracket round 6, so yeah, that's something that on normal circumstances, I would say is finals worthy, but neither of them made it to the finals, and both of them had to face the lower bracket.
Yeah, exactly. As Shin, he was knocked down by Spirit. Spirit coming into this was the heavy favorite. If you remember, Spirit, he was the runner-up of StarCraft Evolution. He came second place only to Dark. Dark was the overall champion. Spirit came second place. So in my mind, Spirit, he was the heavy hitter to win it all. And he was a beast coming into this. He 2-0'd Geralt, he 2-0'd Milky Cow, 2-0'd Shin. Shout out to Young Yakov. Young Yakov, he took down Quanta and also forced the ace match out of Shin. We just saw Young Yakov in the previous Bratok event, but he has been playing a lot more StarCraft Evolution, has been looking pretty good in the event overall. And a lot of clips were made actually regarding Geralt. Geralt, this was his first time playing StarCraft Evolution, and Spirit did
Really?
not hold back. Yeah. Yeah.
That sounds wrong to me. I'm sure Geralt played at least one
I
weekly, right,
can
or something like that. But
I can confirm he
I
said in game as Spirit was I don't think he was cheating him, but as he was running into his base, guys like, come on man, this is my first game.
There was a lot of shenanigans. What was most funny about that series is it looked
Right,
like either Geralt didn't know what maps he was vetoing, or maybe he was like, you know what, Spirit, you can just pick the maps, it's fine, because he doesn't know them. And game one was on near Isles of Siren. That is the new island map. And Geralt had no idea. I was following his probe scout, and you can see his probe get stuck in his island because it looked like he was trying to scout across the map, and you could see it took like a couple of seconds, and then suddenly we had like a question mark in game, and Geralt's like, "Wait a minute." He's like, "What's going? Where am I?" And then the slow realization that it's an island map, and he was caught completely off guard. Like there was there was a lot that really clearly showed that Geralt, he was unfamiliar with the maps specifically, and as you can imagine, maps in StarCraft Evolution, they play a big role.
yeah, big part of balance. Neo Isles of Siren as well.
Mhm.
That has the same syllables and the same amount of syllables as I think another map that is escaping me, and it's gonna bother me for the rest of the broadcast.
Neil Violet
And
Square.
Neon Violet
Yeah.
Square, potentially.
Maybe.
Neo Eyes of Siren, Neo Violet Square,
There was
maybe.
Neo Planet S.
Neo Planet S.
There we go. So yeah, Geralt did well for himself. Milky Cow also took down Killian top in a TBT. Milky Cow doing a very good job there. Did go down to Spirit, but Spirit was a heavy favorite. And Spirit, he was able to breeze his way to the upper bracket, to the grand finals, not dropping a single map in the upper bracket.
Yeah. Shout out to Milky Cow, because the only players who he lost to were Spirit and Classic, who were both the finalists. So yeah, really nicely done from him over there. Spirit taking out Classic in that upper bracket final, and then having a bit of a rematch. This time Classic did win the initial rematch, but the way this works is that we are having a what's it called? A double finals, a double round finals or something like that.
Yeah, because Spirit came in from the upper bracket, because he hadn't lost a series. Classic would have had to have won 2 series back to back. Spirit only had to win 1 series, so that's why he basically had a second life, and there was a second series that played afterwards. I'm coming into the finals. I do want to also give credit to Milky Cow, because again, he had a crazy run taking down Rumiath, Young Yakov, and 3-point to make it to the lower bracket finals. So it was crazy to see Milky Cow perform as well as he did. And in those finals, I was scared it was going to be a 3-0. I don't know if you can see here, but Spirit in that first series, he was up 2-0. Like Spirit was looking dominant. And then Classic, he clawed his way back in. It was a reverse sweep out of Classic, a reverse all kill, if you will, to be able to force that final series, which Spirit did win in the end. And I'm at least glad that Classic put up a fight, because again, up until that finals, like Spirit was looking very, very dominant.
Yeah. You think Geralt gave Classic some of his energy in those finals?
Either that, or Geralt, he went over to Spirit's house. The sabotage was involved. You know, he was like cutting like the internet lines and oh no, doing whatever he could to get his revenge on Spirit.
He filled his water bottle with Jack and Pepsi's.
Oh no, true. Exactly. It just took a while for it to kick in, which is why eventually Classic brought it back. So regardless, GG.
But then after a while he drank too many, and then it reset in the second round.
Exactly. But with that, congratulations to Spirit, and shout out to, of course, the other competitors that made it to the upper echelons of the brackets. Again, this is going to be a monthly tournament, so it's going to be a while until the next StarCraft Evolution League, but it was a fun event nonetheless. And next time I'll try to get Yako involved as well to cast some more SE Evo.
Not before I cast WC3 Evo.
Yes, yeah,
Warcraft
for
3
sure.
Evo.
We'll get there. We will get there as that leads us into the Magic Up Masters Cup number 115. This is another amateur event here on a regular basis, on a bi-weekly basis. It is capped to 4.9k MMR. It is a sister tournament to Masters 1 Open, and we got to see our regulars face off once again.
Yeah, look at that, Captain Britain. He won quite a few of our tournaments and participates quite a bit in our tournaments, facing off against Neo in those grand finals. Neo, who we've had the pleasure of casting quite a number of times. Mostly, I think, plays in a lot of Latin American events, but yeah, it's always nice to see him, regardless.
Yeah, shout out to Neo. From Costa Rica, of course, did make it all the way to those finals, but Captain Britain did win it in the end. Congratulations. As you mentioned, plenty of regulars that we are familiar with, like Fletch, Xenodactyl, Dizzy Dwarf, Dream Matt as well. All players that we have casted ourselves in our own tournaments. So great to see them all still competing, still thriving here in the Magic Up Masters Cup. That leads us into the Passion Craft Emerging Stars number 2.
Yeah, this one won by the very latest pickup for Alien Esports, Inexorable.
Yeah, and I didn't realize this, but this is a weekly. Apparently, this is a weekly. We actually casted the first edition of this last week, so interesting to see this make its return here, becoming a regular event. And it is MMR locked. It is MMR locked to 5.5k and below. That is low GM or like low to mid GM even and below. So yeah, we saw Inexorable able to pop off against Ledalex in those finals.
So you're saying I'm eligible?
You are eligible and legible.
Yes, they can read me.
They can try. They can try. So congratulations to Inexorable. Arguably, this was one of the events that actually gave him like notoriety or put him in the limelight and allowed Alien Esports to actually find him and come across him. Arguably. So regardless, GG. Well played.
Yeah, nicely done.
That leads us into the Code for Giants Cup, into our regional events, where we do feature Inexorable. Inexorable, he was able to make it to the semifinals. Likewise, we had Eric, Master, Kamikaze also facing off, and Eric was able to come out on top here with a 3-1 win. No bias, but congratulations. Eric does take it.
Yeah. Congratulations very much to Eric. I was going to say Inexorable, he would have won if he didn't go up against, the biggest duck in the jungle. So.
In Brazil, in Europe.
In Brazil, yeah. All of you.
Exactly. So, GG, well played, Eric. Eric does take it there. Again, Eric, he has been actually flexing a new build, a new opener, a double hatch opener against Protoss, and he does it against Terran as well. I don't really like it as much against Terran, but he has been flexing it, he has been refining it, and it's been interesting to see the growth of that build, just because a lot of the Europeans have also kind of picked up on it as well. So we'll see if it catches on. We'll see how far it
that
goes.
always happens with Eric's builds, I feel.
It does.
He creates a build, it gets picked up by the EU players, and then all of a sudden, a couple months down the line, commentators are calling it the Cyril build.
True. Oh no. It hits too close to home. This is us calling it out now. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Give us like 6 months, and then there's gonna be like a new Cyril build that mysteriously appears.
We can see the through line exactly. We'll see Eric whip it out against like a Korean player.
Mm-hmm.
Pig will pick up on it and start fanboying over Eric once again, and be like, "Oh my god, this is such a crazy build! Oh, Eric!" And then it'll get introduced to the rest of the players, and especially the EU players. And then Cyril starts bringing it into his own rotation, and then later down the line, people start remembering it as the Cyril build.
There you go. It's gonna happen again.
But you know what? If it means more pig fanboying over Eric, I'll allow it.
There we go. So look forward to that in the coming months, as that does lead us into the Rookie Warpgate Invitational 2025 Winter Edition, where we do have once again another kind of more amateur event from the Chinese scene, from the Chinese community. Players that I'm not really too familiar with, but a really large format and large group stage regardless. A lot of players getting involved. I do notice Bookman, at least. He is an admin for WTL, for SC Boy.
Yeah. I also took a little bit of a look. The winner of this tournament goes by the name of Drink. I took a look at their team. It's huge. It's primarily, by the looks of things, an amateur clan or a semi-pro clan, but it is huge. I think it's one of the largest non-fully professional clans that I've seen coming from the Chinese region and overall as well.
Especially in current StarCraft, right? In the current environment of StarCraft. So, yeah, as you mentioned, a really big team. They have like their
Rookie
B team
Warpgate,
as well.
it's called.
Yeah, exactly. I'm familiar with some of these players, like Pioneer. I think we've seen Pioneer like win some of these amateur events before. But yeah, congratulations to Drink. I mean, hey, he even got his own Wikipedia page as well. Let's go.
Drink, who defeats Wu Ren Ni Huang, which means not your yellow.
Sure.
Pretty sure that's what that means. Yes.
Google Translate says it translates to boogie pop, but okay.
Yes.
Yeah. There you go.
I got asked today if I'm able to assist with Mandarin. I said
What did
yes.
you say? Why did you lie to this person? Oh no. Oh no. Did you assist? Did you translate?
I didn't have to. So
okay. Yeah. That's how you do it, man. You say you can and you just pray that that nothing comes up.
Yeah.
Let's go. It worked.
Yeah. It's my pro tip to everyone watching.
Oh, no. But that leads us into our show matches. That leads us into the Fairy Cup number 12, which we were lucky enough to cover here on the channel. Again, the Fairy Cup, they've been hosting sporadically some events throughout the course of 2024. This was the first event for 2025, and it was a show match, a best of 7 between Zaun and Byun.
And already, I have to say, Light, I'm disappointed that I can't scrutinize the crop.
I know. I was like, what? Wait. I was Little League Cup. They set a standard. They set a very low bar that we've yet to see a bar even lower than that. But we'll get there. Here, the graphics a little bit more professional in nature. But I love like the retro vibe when it comes to the aesthetic of the backgrounds. The Tron Mountain. Let's go. I don't know what's fairy about that. But...
yeah, what's the theme though?
I have no idea.
This one, what are they gonna keep you doing this style? Because if they do, then I'm not gonna question it. But if they have something different next week, then it's like, why this retro style? Why for that week? Why something different this week? You know?
Yeah, we'll be able to dissect the graphics in the coming editions to see if they do switch it up or not, and we'll try to find a theme. We'll try to figure out what's Fairy Cup about that Tron Mountain. Figure it out.
Well, Zaun. Byun.
Yeah.
Sounds a bit like Tron.
The leap, the leap. It's Tron. Oh, okay, sure. Okay, are we? What? You lost me on the way there, mate. I was with you, and then I don't know where we went. Okay.
You lost the trail. The trail was 2 steps.
Oh no. But yeah, they had a best of 7, went all the way to the ace match. Actually, went all the way to game 7. You do love to see it. Did barely go the way of Zaun. Zaun, there's been a lot of hype around him as of late. I mean, again, we've been seeing him take down players like Clem on a semi-regular basis. Zaun has been a beast, which is why I'm happy to see Bjorn facing off against him. Again, Bjorn, he's been a little bit more under the radar over the past month, maybe over the past. Maybe just over a month at this point. So yeah, to see them duke it out and go to the ace match was a treat. Was a treat.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Zaun definitely has a very interesting PvT style, a very defensive one that I think clashes really, really excitingly against Bjorn's aggressive TvP style. So always a treat to catch 2 of them, and yeah, especially when it becomes a full 7-game series.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. As that does lead us into the Soup StarCraft Global number 12. We do have a 4-player invitational and an interesting one as well. I was a little bit confused when it came to the first round. We have seen Dark has been playing a little Protoss recently. He's been off racing as kind of like Clem and kind of like Raynor, off racing as Protoss against other Zerg players. So that I was not surprised by. But if you look at this series here, mate, what was going on?
Shin also played. So not only did Dark play more Protoss than Zerg, he only played Zerg once in that matchup. Shin also only played Zerg once, played Terran once, and then played Protoss 3 times.
Oh yeah. He played Protoss. We saw some Terran getting involved as well. Just a crazy series here, and I mean, I'm impressed that Shin was able to defeat Dark's Protoss in the PvP. True. But then Shin lost his Terran, and then Shin just committed to Protoss again. He just stuck with it.
Yeah, that's a smart way of doing it.
There you go. And with that Dark, he does come out ahead, and
he learned the hard way what happens when you play Terran.
True. You get Protoss.
The depression hit hard. Moj just overzoomed him. Overzoomed? I think I tried to say consume and overcame. I think I tried to combine overcame and consume.
Oh no.
So it overzoomed him.
The smudge was real. The smudge was just a little bit too real, and in the end, Dark does take it. Likewise, we saw Gumiho. Gumiho took down Rogue 3-0. Dominant performance out of Gumiho in the semis, but when it came to the grand finals, Dark, he was able to bring it back, and alas, this time Dark did not off-race versus Gumiho. Did commit to his main race, and with that, did win 4-0.
Yeah, unfortunate. Would have liked to see some off race coming out from Gumiho and off race Gumiho versus Dark, but
100%.
Yeah, not Dark in the end, for winning it.
I would have loved to see what Gumiho would do with Zerg and Protoss. In the hands of Gumiho, what would he do with those races?
Protoss especially, because here's another fun fact: SC2 history trivia. Gumiho played in his first GSL as a random player. He lost terribly. He got knocked out in the first round. But I think to this day, he was, not the only one, but one of the very few who actually officially signed up as a random player. Signed up and played as random.
Yeah, for sure. So one day we'll get there. He'll revert to his random form. But for now, GG will play it. Dark does win the Soup StarCraft Global number 12.
Yeah, fun fact, the amount of tails that Gumiho has is the amount of off-race.
No.
I realize that there are way too many tails. It's one tail for each matchup that he's good at. Because there are 9 matchups overall.
Think about it.
Think about it. You have TVZ, you have TVP, you have PVT, you have PVZ, you have ZVP, you have ZVT, and then you have the mirrors.
Okay.
There you go.
I thought you were gonna bring it back to somehow to the K drama, and tie and tie it in there, but it's fine. We don't have to go down that route. It's fine. Oh no.
What was the description of the first episode that Steele photoshopped? His grandfather wants him to play Protoss. Or no, it's not him. It's the protagonist, and then Gumiho is the one who saves him. from SOS.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, there was something about SOS. I don't know, man. I don't know. We'll review the first
SOS,
episode
I guess
eventually.
DT rushes him? Question mark. I don't
Yes,
remember.
yeah, something along those lines. Regardless, that leads us into the Basilisk Big Bang Bouts number 83, and this was an interesting event here.
Hold on.
Yeah, as it looks like we
The-
have one match that was postponed.
Yes, one match was postponed. This is the tech issues that Rotterdam was talking about. Before we talk about this week's Basilisk Big Brain Bouts, I have to ask, because I wasn't here last week, did we get confirmation on Jumi getting the 4 back?
Unfortunately, he doesn't have it back. Does not have it back.
It was in the graphic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But,
Unfortunately,
I guess he didn't. I guess he could only afford to rent it for that photo shoot. For that graphic.
Exactly. But we once again had a bit of a show match here between Cobblestone and Magnath, Rodzin versus Fiance, Goblin versus Nickrat, and Mana versus Nikic. As you did mention, unfortunately there were some tech issues from on Rodzin's side of things, so most likely these matches are going to be rescheduled, I would imagine.
Or at least Goblin versus Nickrat, if not rescheduled, and they just play out the rest of the series elsewhere. This could be an inconsistency from TL, but I'm looking at how they actually did post the main event. It looks like we do have confirmation of Mana versus Nikic, so I'm assuming that they played out their matches, and we just don't know what went on in them just yet. I imagine that Rotterdam will cast the replays.
Yeah, that's what I would imagine, right? That maybe they maybe they still played and maybe like Indy casted them or something, but like the results themselves weren't revealed, and maybe Rotterdam will be casting into English later on. Regardless, I'm sure we'll get an update on that. Honestly, I look forward to it. Like Mana vs. Nikic sounds like a very fun series. Same with Goblin versus Nickrat. So we'll keep you guys updated. Most likely we'll have another result coming in next week. I'm sure instead of like hosting a new Big Brain Bouts, maybe they'll wrap this one up, or maybe like have they'll add some extra ones to this. Something along those lines.
I would ask what the theme of this Big Brain Bouts is, but it hasn't really been played out fully, so...
I have tech issues is the theme. That's
the theme, yeah. I mean, a lot of Platinum Heroes players here, so...
True.
Oh, Platinum Heroes, right? And Platinum Heroes, it's an eagle for their symbol. Mm-hmm. And then you also have Fiant playing for Team Roddy. That's a phoenix.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you have Mana on Team Liquid, and you know what? Mm-hmm. People say that it's a horse. That's a misconception. It's their emblem is a Pegasus.
Uh-huh.
And then Streamer Zone...
Right.
We all know they have jetpacks, so that's the theme. They're flying. They are all flying, except for Nikic.
Streamer Zone.
Yeah, Streamer Zone. Rodzin. Oh no, that's Platinum East. Wait.
I mean, it's purple. It's
Platinum
fine.
Esports. We all know they all have Platinum. It's a key component to creating jet engines. So they fly. Platinum Esports, yeah.
It is a key component of jet engines. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
There you go. It all makes sense. It all makes
sense. They all have wings.
Yeah.
They all drank Red Bull.
Battle of the Skies.
Exactly. Except for Nikic, but...
No,
but Nikic, he's seamless. That means he spreads his own wings.
Exactly. There you go. Red Bull? Think about it.
Yeah. Think about it.
Sponsor Nikic.
Exactly. You're done. They don't have to. They used to sponsor Rainer.
Yeah. Bomber.
And Bomber.
Yeah. Nurture.
Yeah. And Nurtio.
Everyone.
Just sponsor everyone. Yeah. They sponsored the back-to-back Dota 2 team champions.
There you go. I'll take your word on that one. Sure. Yeah.
Red Bull, man. You're gonna sponsor anyone, you might as well sponsor Nikic. Also, this is not the Nikic I remember. I had to say in the graphic.
Oh, hold on. So there's a graphic?
Yeah, there's a graphic here. I remember him having much longer hair.
Oh, okay. Are you thinking of Nikic or someone else?
I could be thinking of the other player from from Belarus.
Okay.
There are two of them.
Mhm.
I could be
Wanna be
thinking
Bjorn?
of no, not Wanna Be Beyond. Wait, apparently no, I'm not thinking of a player from Belarus. What?
I think of Night Phoenix.
Are you thinking of Nicorrect?
I'm not thinking of Night Phoenix. No, I'm not. I'm not thinking of Nicorrect, even though I do know that Nicorrect also has long hair.
Mhm.
I'm thinking specifically of a Zerg player,
Zerg
which I'm
player.
pretty sure is Nikic. I'm pretty sure I'm thinking of Nikic
Uh-huh.
having much longer hair than this. I could be wrong.
Okay, okay. Fair enough. We'll find
Hashtag not
this.
my Nikic.
We'll find this anonymous Zerg player at some point. It's fine. It's fine. That leads us into our next event. That's going to be the Online Community Cup number 143. This is a very sporadic event, by the way. It used to be a regular event. It used to be a weekly at one point back in the day, many, many years ago. In recent years, we had one event in 2022, one event in 2023, and zero in 2024, by the way. So it's, again, just very irregular. Despite that, we did have one this week. So great to see a return. And we had once again, a plethora of PvPs coming into the bracket. Shout out to Nickrak. Yo, Funada, whoever seeded this bracket, they had Nickrak play against Baby Marine in the first round. Like, mate, what's going on? Like, spread out the Terrans, Pappy. Spread them out. Oh my god.
Meanwhile, pay no attention to Rainer slipping a check in the organizer's seed in the seeder's pocket.
No. True. Wanted to make his brother suffer. But yeah, Nick Ratchy was able to perform well, went all the way to the semis. Meanwhile, Christiana popping off took down Harstem, by the way. Harstem, the captain himself, did fall to Christiana. He got tuned.
Yeah. They get cupped.
And Christiana would bring him down. Took down Nick Ratchy and then went up against Jimmy in the finals.
Yeah, shout out to Jumi for making it through the gauntlet of PvP, but also facing Percival in the first round, so a little bit of PvT action going on there as well. In the end, though, Cristiano just a bit more experience and a bit more in form that week.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with Jumi recently. I mean, we've been giving him some praise as of late, post breakup with Eva. But
Yeah.
Jumi, he has been performing really well, and he toured Geralt, like he toured Shameless. Like these are some really big Protoss players currently, and I would rate them equivalent, if not higher, than Jumi. So, yeah, really impressive performances so far, at least in the PvP matchup. As you mentioned, Cristiano did bring him down, but Cristiano has been a little bit more on that rise. Regardless, GG, and yeah, really good performance.
Yeah.
GG will play that.
I was gonna say I do appreciate that they also had a bonus raffle, but I feel like ever since TKL's tournament, I feel like it should be Protoss should be ineligible from the raffles.
True. We just want to give some money to Dammy. We just the only Zerg player. Oh no. We'll see. We'll see if the initiative is continued in other tournaments. Speaking of other tournaments, we did have the OC King of the Hill number 199. Where we had some interesting results coming into this. First things first, we had Christiana. He was able to pop off initially with a very big win streak, taking down some big names. But that was cut short by Cham.
Hell yeah, fell to El Campeón. Yeah, Cristiano able to take down the likes of Shameless, Percival, Geralt, Nicorakt, and GG Machine before falling to Cham, who went on a little bit of a win streak of his own, taking down UD Soldier, Hydra, Art, but ultimately falling to Jumi.
Yeah, then we had a bit of a back and forth. We had Jumi taking down Jam. We had Eva once again. Eva, he comes out. Jumi, he was so happy to play. He was like, oh, let's go. Let me pop off. Like, he takes down Cham, takes down the king. And then Eva rocks up and slaps him down. He's like, get out of here, kid.
You could escape me?
So, oh, thanks for keeping that crown warm for me. Let me just take that from you. And yeah, Jimmy got taken out. But then we had an unlikely of heroes here. Shino, he has been a very active player, especially when it comes to the online tournaments. But I believe this is one of his first OSC King of the Hills. He has not been a very active OSC member throughout the years, and likewise hasn't had the strongest results either, which is why I'm shocked to see him take down Eva, Baby Marine, and Mixu.
Yeah, some big names of each race here.
Mhm.
Yeah, very well done here from a player who I was not familiar with myself, and
Yeah.
like I said, just a very unlikely hero coming in here.
Mhm.
An
Yeah,
unlikely
100.
hero because he took out Eva, so
Yeah, like big shout to
who
Shino.
is always the villain.
Yeah, I mean, like up and coming Zerg players are a rare sight nowadays, most of them Protoss. So great to see
Well,
Shino getting success.
yeah, when we say up and coming, Shino's been around for a
True,
while, but yeah,
true,
hasn't
true.
really had that breakthrough performance yet. Hasn't really
Mhm.
had a big ESL Masters result or anything like that. ESL Masters EU, I mean. So yeah, taking out Iba, Baby Marine, and Mixu. If he continues on, and continues practicing and continues competing, I can definitely see him becoming one of the rising names.
Yeah, we'll see if that trend continues. In the end, he was knocked down by Skillus, but I mean, it's it's Nikita.
It's
I mean,
Nikita, so yeah.
yes, Skillus, the heavy favorite, did come out as the reigning king of the hill with the final spots and is going to be invited into the next event. So best of luck to Skillus. Congratulations, of course, to Cristiano, Cham, and Shino for their, of course, big win streaks. That leads us into the OC Season 12 Championship, to the lower bracket round 2, which did conclude. We had, again, a lot of best of fives taking place here, and we had some crazy results coming in. It looks like there was a bit of a misreport, but Nick Rat versus Wayne went to the ace match. Did go to the ace match, and Nick Rat, with a big upset, took Wayne down. Like, coming into that, Wayne, I would say, was the heavy
Ooh.
favorite.
Yeah, Wayne, who just just coming off the back of winning Fire Girl Cup and doing really well for himself in a lot of regional and CIS events. Yeah, loses to Nicoract 3-2 in a very close series. I would not have expected it to go down any other way, or the score at least. I would not have expected it to go down any other way, but I would have expected Wayne to edge it out. So it
Mhm.
really shows how much better Nicoract has been improving in that TVZ matchup.
100%. So big win there for Nickrat. Scrolling down, we had Solar. Solar takes down Rebellion 3-0. Which is a little bit more expected. We had Mana taking down Minnow VK, which is
Oh,
expected, but not the scoreline because it went all the way to the ace match.
yeah, I've been saying this for quite a while, man. He's getting his second win, his midlife win. He's been doing really well for himself in these past couple of months. But I would have expected him to win, but I would not have expected Mindle VK to have taken him all the way to the ace match.
Yeah, Mindle, he's been active once again. He's been getting some really good results as of late. So it's great to see Mindle VK not just taking like a role as a content creator, a streamer, caster, tournament organizer, but as also a player. So yeah, really good results out of Mindle VK. He's knocked out of the tournament, but he went down swinging.
Yeah, swinging at one of the more storied players in this bracket.
For sure. That leads us into Knife East versus Honmono. Honmono, he cheesed every game.
Yeah,
But
if I had to guess, this entire series probably lasted 10 minutes long.
he pulled the boys every game.
Every single time.
Let's go. And Night Phoenix, he weathered the storm. It's one of those things where Homeowner has a reputation, and Night Phoenix has plenty of experience with Homeowner when it comes to the online tournaments. So Night Phoenix, he just played very safely. Very safe play at a Night Phoenix, very defensive. Did take it in the end. That leads us into Spirit. Spirit takes down Young Yakov 3-0. Dominant performance there by Spirit.
Ooh.
Again, he is a heavy hitter, not just in StarCraft Evolution, but in SC2 as well.
I mean, the score itself, I think, is a bit of an upset. I would have expected Spirit to win, but I would have at least expected Young Yakov to be able to take a map. But yeah, Spirit, man, I guess he was just really informed that day.
Oh yeah, Yeah, Spirit, he was in form. Getting his revenge for what happened at the House Galactic Battle. If you remember, he did
Right.
not make it to the finals of that event. Got knocked out a little bit earlier. So, venting his
Not by
frustrations.
young Yakov, though.
No,
He did get
true,
knocked out by
true.
Zerg, but not young Yakov.
uh, he's he was innocent, Pappy. Leave him alone. But it does bring Young Yakov down. Heading on over, that leads us to Creator versus Mixu. Creator takes the 3-0 over Mixu. Again, Creator, he is
Ooh.
back. He is in form. He's back from the mountains, back from Japan. Again, a really rough opponent there for Mixu. But again, Mixu, he was able to hold his own for a time. Fun fact, there was actually a lot of Glaive Adepts in that series, a lot of Glaive Adept builds. And what was interesting was that Mixu, he would survive and actually defend quite well against the Glaive Adepts, and then it's the follow-up that would catch him off guard, whether it was like an Immortal-based all-in or a Stalker follow-up.
Well, I imagine he was forced to either rebuild his drones or not build as many drones as he would like. So, yeah, that definitely makes sense. Your Glaive Adepts, even if you're not getting too much damage, can still work in your favor if you're forcing a Zerg opponent to spend your larva on units that aren't going to be too useful later down the line.
For sure. So Creator takes a win there. Meanwhile, we had a big upset, by the way. We were chronicling the return of Arrowfire, and we were already impressed that Arrowfire took down Jumi in the previous round. As a reminder, Arrowfire, he had, pseudo retired for 2024. He only recently came back, joining Alien Esports. And with that joining of the new team, he takes down Classic in a best of 5.
Wow. Absolutely huge upset. Classic, I would say, is one of the heavy favorites coming into this entire tournament, and definitely in the lower bracket as well. I would have pegged him to be the heavy favorite, but now he's out. Now he is out, and he got defeated by Arrowfire, of all players.
And suddenly, we have to say, as of course Nightmare took down Shameless 3-1, Nightmare also making his return. We have to say that coming into this, I would have favored Nightmare against Arrowfire, like in a vacuum, seeing those matches. But
Yeah.
considering Arrowfire just took down Jumi and Classic, is Arrowfire now the favorites? Is Nightmare in trouble? Like, I don't know.
There's a path here where Arrowfire PvPs his way all the way to the grand finals, and
it's possible.
It's not something that you can really discount. I, for one, wouldn't be surprised if it happens. I don't think I'd be too surprised if Arrowfire beats Nightmare here, but I do want to just give the edge to Nightmare just because historically PvP has been the matchup that Nightmare has dominated for such a very long time. But again, just based on these past 2 rounds for Arrowfire, I don't think we can count him out. I don't think we could say definitively that, Nightmare is going to win this, even if it is a 3-2.
100%. So, I mean, I think regardless of what happens here, I hope Arrowfire is able to, walk away with his head held high, as he has achieved so much in this tournament already, like some crazy results. But he might not be done. We could see another crazy result coming in as well.
Yeah. And who's after? It will be either Geralt or Christiana in that next round, I think. No, Hero or Skills in that next round.
Yeah, more Protoss. So, yeah, best of luck. Best of luck to Arrowfire to all the other competitors, of course, coming into lower bracket round 3 and also upper bracket round 3 as well. That leads us into our weekly Open Cups as we are nearing the end. So we have all of our open tournaments coming up next. Up first, we have the Sparkling Tunic Cup number 78.
Yes, I think I was asleep with this one.
I think this is around the time that you were recovering. It's all good. It's all good. But yeah, we did have a massive bracket, by the way. I think the largest bracket we've ever had for Sparkling Tunic Cup. We had a full round of 32, and I think even maybe a couple of players beyond that as well, all facing off here in Sparkling Tunic Cup. And we had some of our regulars having some deep runs here. Shout out to Mino VK. Mino VK took down Rodzin 2-1. Trigger had a deep run, making it all the way to the finals, mainly off of his PvP. Took down Shameless. Shameless did fall. And likewise, at the lower part of the bracket, we had Jumi popping off as well.
Yeah, Jumi and Trigger, grand finals. That I couldn't have asked for a better PvP.
I think the only thing I would have wanted out of this tournament was, unfortunately, Homono, he denied the Iba Jumi rematch. They were they were destined to
Ah,
face, and Iba, he was denied that. Likewise, shout out to Sebestis. Sebestis, he actually had a crazy result. If you look at the round of 16, he actually took down Geralt. I would have favored
oh.
Geralt to make a deep run here, but he went down a lot earlier in the tournament.
Yeah, he took out Geralt, and then he took a map off of Jumi as well. That's some really impressive work coming out here from Sibedes.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. So shout out to, of course, Sebestis, Jumi, and of course Trigger for winning the entire event. Does come out on top. Of course, Trigger, he came in to slap all the other players around and make sure
Yeah,
that they
make
go
them
to
all
bed
go
in
to
time.
bed. Yeah, making sure that Jumi, will wake up in time for his appointment.
100%, 100%. So Trigger, who was there for that, does claim the win in Sparkling Tuna Cup. That leads us into the Hub Cup number 5, which again is kind of a new replacement European event. At a bit of a more European-friendly time zone. Looks like we have changed the format a little bit, though, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, so in the previous Hub Cups, it was double elimination, but looks like they've gotten some feedback. My biggest criticism was because of double elimination, it was a very long event. I think a lot of the players are getting fatigued. This time, single elimination instead.
Yeah, and they have the players for it, so it makes
Mhm.
sense.
Oh, yeah.
Nice to, yeah, I was just gonna say, nice to see Showtime participating here, making it all the way to the semifinals, but does get taken out by Max Pax in the end. Max Pax went on to face Clem in the age-old grand finals that we've all come used to, but yeah, this time Clem actually dominating a little bit more one-sided on the side of Clem.
Yeah, 3-0 in favor of Clem. Big win there for Clem. I do want to give a shout out though to Jumi and Showtime because they both did take maps off of Max Pax. Jumi went to the ace match against Max Pax and Showtime took a map as well. So nice performances from those two players. Outside of that, any other results that stand out? I would say Milky Cow versus Geralt. Again, Milky Cow, he has been returning and he has been rising up when it comes to skill. I would still favor Geralt though. So yeah, Geralt having a bit of a harder time in some of these tournaments.
Yeah, a little bit tougher for him this week, but I'm sure it won't be long before he gets a couple of Geralts in him and is back on that winning grind.
He just needs some of that Pepsi. Just
Yeah.
oh no. This has to be topped up once again, as that leads us into the Wardy TV Monday number 21. Once again, we get that Clem versus Max Pax rematch from the Hub Cup this time, where history repeats itself. Clem once again takes the win, but this time we did have more competition in the finals. Even in the lead up to the finals, Classic did force Clem to the ace match. It was a very clutch series, and Max Pax likewise forcing Clem to the ace match in the finals as well.
Clem playing too much Protoss, it seems.
Or not enough.
Or none, yeah.
No. As yeah, was able to take down a Classic and Max
Ooh.
Pax, a Dark as well, of course, a dominant performance there. We had Skills going to the ace. Honestly, Skills looked really good. He looked really good against Dark. Skills, his PVZ has been improving so much here over the past couple of months. It's been really coming to fruition here in these results.
Yeah, great results here out of Skills, taking the map off of Dark and also beating Geralt once again in that round of 16. Shout out as well to Creator, actually beating Gumiho 2-1.
Yeah, Creator, he pops off against Gumiho, knocks him out. We had Nice, by the way, the return of Nice,
True.
taking a map off of Hero.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I normally expect it to be Rex to come in and to be the Taiwanese player to come in and cause a bit of an upset or even just take a map off of a top favorite. But yeah, this time I guess Rex was busy, so Nice stepped in and filled his shoes a little bit.
Yeah, I think what's impressive is that again, Nice is retired.
Ooh.
Like he announced his retirement a while
Yeah.
ago. So he only plays every now and then, like whenever he has free time, kind of like Go Joey, if you will, where he like plays every now and then, like in an event. So really cool to see the return of Nice.
Yeah, speaking of that match, Hero did beat Nice 2-1, but then Trigger beats Hero 2-0 in the very next round.
Yeah, I mean, Trigger, he's had some crazy PvP. It did fall to max packs, but Trigger, his PvP has been looking insane as of late. This is actually not the first time that Trigger's beaten Hero in the past month. Like, he's been getting like a solid record, at least against other Korean Protosses. So, yeah, Trigger, he's not one to be taken lightly. He 2-0'd Cure. Like, let's not gloss over that, mate. Like, mate, Trigger, he's whipping all the players.
Yeah. Waking all of them up.
Let's go. So GG well played. That leads us into the Monday night weeklies. Again, that a big shout out to TKL for running this event. This is where there is a bonus prize for the highest ranking Zerg player. And this week it actually went to a Korean, not a European. It was last week that it went to a laser, this time to 3-point.
Yeah, once again, we actually have a winner this time, so no ties. Whenever there is a tie, I believe they just add the bonus to the next week's bonus, and this time that was 1 3-point, making it all the way to the lower bracket quarterfinals, being the top placing Zerg player of the evening.
Yeah, he was able to take down Nikic and Skillis to make it that far, so big win there. Those are best of ones, though, so again, there's a lot of chaos, I'm sure, ensuing in that lower bracket format, so congratulations to 3-point.
What I like about this bracket is 3-point versus Nikic were fighting for the bonus, essentially.
True.
Whoever won there would have been the one to win the bonus.
Exactly,
3-point after beating Nikic, also went on to beat Skillis, so yeah, pretty well deserved, but yeah, I like that was what they were fighting for at that point.
100%. Now, there is a player missing here, which is surprising considering that this is more of a European-friendly tournament.
Clem. That. But we know that he's a bit of a degen.
True. Clem, he made it to the finals. Clem, he was being whipped by Trigger earlier to actually go to sleep, to actually fix his schedule. Someone that was not was Max Pax. Max Pax nowhere to be found. Instead, did get some rest for this tournament. Didn't compete.
You're not allowed to whip royalty, though, I think.
True. Yeah, not allowed to.
Or I think maybe he can because he's I think maybe Trigger can because he's not Danish.
Huh.
If you're not a citizen, you're not allowed to, I think.
There you go.
Or no, if you're a citizen, you're not allowed to, but if you're not...
There you go. But congratulations to Clem. We did have a back-and-forth series with Hero, because in the upper bracket finals and in the grand finals, both times ace match. Both times did go to the ace match, so Hero put up a strong fight. In the end, though, he did fall to Clem twice, and Clem, champion, once again.
Yeah. He took it, and then he followed Trigger's instructions. He followed the whipping, and went straight to bed after this.
I'm sure he did. And that leads us, we have confirmation because that leads us into the Pegasaur Monday, and Clem was nowhere to be found this week. Clem, I'm sure, did go to bed, and instead we had Hero staying up. Hero was the DJ, and I just realized we rarely see Hero in the Monday Night Weeklies. He was there, and he stayed up to play in this as well. Crazy.
Yeah. He knew he knew making it all the way to the finals was a good sign for him, so he just decided to degen it up a little bit. He knew that Clem wouldn't be here this time, and as a result was able to win, beating Gerald in those grand finals. Gerald actually doing pretty good this time.
Yeah, if you recall, we were talking about, I did mention I was trying to praise Geralt for his performance against, I was praising Skills against his performance against Dark, but Geralt, he popped up against Solar. I remember casting this, and it was like, okay, Solar and Hero, they're the top two seeds. Top two seeds of the bracket. They're supposed to face off, but no, Geralt, he denies that. He shuts Solar down. We spoke earlier, if you remember, about that villain arc that Solar was heading into, and it looks like he's still there. Like, God, he's still
He
like
hasn't hit rock bottom yet.
He's getting there though. He's
the problem.
Oh no. As he's knocked out by Geralt, a big win there, and in the end, Hero does claim it. But something that I'm a little bit surprised by, I believe this is the first, I couldn't be mistaken, but I believe this is the first time, at least I've noticed, that Hero was the player to play in all three. Wardy Monday, into Monday Night, into Pegasaur Monday. Like, usually Hero...
to be like Björn or Shin sometimes. Not Hero. Hero typically not one to degen it up.
Yeah, as you mentioned, right? Like it's either Björn or Shin or Clem or Max Pax, right? Like it's usually one of one of the others. But yeah, what's going on, Hero? Something's up. He's going a little bit
Trouble
full
in
degen on
paradise,
us.
you know.
No. He's maybe like he got visited by SOS over the weekend or something, and it flared up some dark
Uh,
memories. I don't know. I don't know.
You mean
But
like the ghost of like Christmas past and stuff?
yeah. The ghost of SOS appeared before him and
uh,
traumatized Hero.
he,
We'll
showed,
see if this becomes. Mhm.
he taunted him with the check that he won from IEM, where it
Oh
was the
no.
all or nothing edition,
Hmm.
and he's like, "Hey, hero, remember when you didn't win this?"
Oh no. Oh no. And we'll see if the trend continues. You know, we'll keep an eye out for Hero next week or in the coming week to see if he continues this streak of degenness or if it's a one-off thing. Definitely something to keep an eye on. Could be the beginning of something.
Yeah, he needs trigger in his life. Is what he needs.
He does. He does. Maybe this is a cry for help. Maybe he saw Trigger whipping everyone else, and maybe he wants to be whipped.
Yeah,
There you go. Confirmed.
confirmed. Hero, not to be whipped.
Oh God. As this leads us into the final event, actually played earlier today, the Tenacious Turtle Tussle number 27, where likewise we had a returning player who has been active over the past month, Cham El Chamaco. We've been seeing him pop off in OC King of the Hill in the Biggest on Mondays, and now he was here for the first time in a long time in the Tenacious Turtle Tussle.
Yeah, love to see it, mate. And they popped off this tussle. Cham winning the whole thing, Vindicta making it all the way to the semifinals.
Mm-hmm. Two-time Cristiano.
Took down Christianity, yeah.
Yeah. Big win there for Vindicta. Cristiano, he's a rare sight for this tournament, and I even messaged him after the fact, where he lost the series against Vindicta, and he was like, "Man, I can't play at 2 a.m." And I'm like,
Yeah,
you're not,
they're
Geralt,
not
Nick
tuned.
Ract, like Clem, Max Pax, their practice, their experience with the degenness of playing
Yeah.
at this hour. You're not quite there yet. He's like, "Yeah, I'm good. I'll just play in the tuners."
You're not a degen yet. And he's like, I don't want to be a degen. Bring me
He's
back.
it's like, I didn't like this. Get me out of here. It's like, okay, fair
Uh,
enough. So yeah, he didn't have the best experience here, at least playing deep lane tonight. Venita did get the win. Likewise, fun facts by the way, the one of the best moments of the night was as Cristiano GG'd out, he said GG, good luck versus Geralt. And Geralt was in the Twitch chat. He's like, the hell? He was like, what a traitor! Like, what the hell? Like, we're both Polish, we're both European, we're Protoss, and he's cheering against me.
this
Oh my
fucking
god!
guy. That was the fuel. That was the fuel that Geralt needed.
Exactly. So he was able to bring Vindicta down, led to the finals. Finals was a very clutch series, very close, very back and forth. Cham, of course, is hyper aggressive. We saw a lot of mutas, actually, a lot of mutas in a lot of these games, and Cham did barely get the win in the end over Geralt.
Geralt has to have played against Cham, right? In OSC events in the past.
I'm sure they
I have to
have, but
imagine they faced.
yeah, I think recently they played in in OC King of the Hills, but there's the best of ones, right? There's the best of ones. So
Yeah.
I don't know how much Cham has been really experiencing much of. Garros has been really experiencing much of Cham. Likewise, you mentioned how Cham has been very inactive as of late. It was only like this year where he's been ramping it up again. So yeah, it was definitely a new experience, I'm sure, and it was a lot of fun seeing Cham again.
Yeah. Has a very unique style. I'm sure he's still gearing up for his rematch against Micah.
Oh yeah. I'm sure he is, so I'm sure we'll be able to host that again one day. Maybe. Maybe in Age of Empires.
We need to get them in the RTS triathlon.
Ah, there you go. There you go.
You know, it's like how Evo has multiple different titles, multiple
Mhm.
different fighting games, and most people who compete in them compete in multiple titles. We need that for RTS. We
Mhm.
need not Evo, but Revo.
Uh-huh. See, when you said Evo, I thought you were talking about StarCraft Evolution. I was like, oh, like they could play there, but it's like, oh, okay, no.
We
Evo.
should include SC Evo as part of the
Yeah.
Revo.
Sure. We can make it happen. We can make it happen. But with that, congratulations to Cham. Am I crazy? Was he the only Zurich champion for the Open Cups? I think so.
Champ?
Let's go. Yeah.
Cham was?
Yeah. Outside of that, it was like it was Clem, it was
Hero.
Trigger. Mhm. Yeah, Clem, Hero, and Trigger. Those are the others. So yeah, shout out to Cham. Let's go.
There we go, Cham.
Balance.
He's on he's on the same league as
Mhm.
Clem, Hero, and Trigger. There we
There you
go.
go. There you go. GG. So shout out to Chim, of course, waving that Zerg flag in the Turtle Tussle, and I'm sure he'll be back next time as well. So yeah, with that, that wraps up all of our events for the week. Again, we spent a lot of time going over the Chobra interview. That was, I think we spent like almost 2 hours on just that one interview. It was crazy.
It's a good interview.
It was. But with that, we have finally wrapped up the events of the week. If you want to tune in yourself, if you want to compete yourself, you can of course check out the tournament signups in the chat. We have plenty of events here. We have, it looks like, Upper Tree hosting his own Upper Cup viewer tournament. We have the MSO. We have Euthermal's 2v2 tournament over the weekend, and many other events are open to signups.
Yeah, take a look.
So do check out those signups. Likewise, if you want to help support our tournaments like the Sparkling Tuna Cup or MSO and SDO as well, then you can check out our Patreon. Again, all the money that we make there goes straight towards the tournaments that we host and the tournaments that we run, so you can help support us there if you wish. Otherwise, thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in, for supporting us. Again, Yaku, thank you so much for joining me today as well. I know that last time you had to kind of end it a little bit shorter, but I'm glad to see that you recovered. You're good to go. Your immunity back on the rise.
Yeah. I got that boost.
There you go.
I'm juiced.
You're juiced up and ready to go. And Yaku, I do have a question for you before we head off here as we're wrapping up.
Yes.
You've been playing through the campaign of Brood War. Got through the
Yes.
Terran campaign, got through the Zerg campaign. You got one campaign left, at least when it comes to vanilla StarCraft. Do you have any plans?
Oh yeah, there's Root War after that.
Yes,
I do have plans, but not for February. It's a busy
Okay,
month.
okay. Fair enough. March?
Probably. Maybe.
Okay.
But
Maybe.
I might be even busier in March. We'll see how things go. We'll see how things go. But yeah, it's not looking like any time in February.
Fair enough.
That's what I can confirm.
So I'm sure we'll get the conclusion of StarCraft, the StarCraft campaign from Yaku at some point in the near future, or in the future, I should say. Otherwise, look forward to the upcoming GLHF interviews. Look forward to the TLMC. When it comes to the Team Liquid map contest, I believe again, submission phase did conclude quite some time ago, but we should be getting into the judging phase soon, I would imagine.
Yeah. Can't wait to see the judgments.
Let's double check here. So the Team Liquid judging phase is between the 28th of January. It ends on February the 17th. So it looks like, again, basically during this period, the quote-unquote judges for the TLMC are reviewing all of the maps. It takes a long time. It's a long process to go through every single map and to kind of vet them and to basically cut some of them out and to bring the others forward. So again, it's still going to be another 10 days before that phase concludes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
after
it
that,
takes a
then
while to really scrutinize all of them, go inside, find all the little Easter eggs, which ones are potentially game breaking and which ones aren't.
True, true. It's gonna be after that judging phase, and after they're able to like sift through and refine the maps themselves and bring to us the quote unquote finalists or the maps to be voted on to public voting. We'll be jumping into them. We'll be able to jump into them ourselves in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. I'm sure there will be a couple of tournaments hosted as well. We can usually pretty reliably count on Wardy hosting a couple of TLMC tournaments or show matches at the very least, and I'm sure many other streamers and casters will want to get in on this as well. So yeah, whether it's having something specifically to showcase the new maps or just updating map pools of their previous tournaments.
100%. So keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for tuning in. We do appreciate it. Again, we'll be back next week here with the next podcast, catching up with all the news of the week in StarCraft. And with that, Yaku, do you have anything you want to say before we head off for the night?
I want people to know that I tried to trick Light before coming on to before we went live. I tried tricking Light into thinking I was Kuro, but it didn't work.
You did not do a good job.
And I did.
trying
I disagree. I strongly disagree, and I want the viewers to be able to tell for themselves.
Okay. With that, thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Our next broadcast is going to be in 10.5 hours with a Lima League with the winter final. So do tune into that. Otherwise, tomorrow, Yaku, we should be back. We should be live with the Warcraft 3 Evolution broadcast. Hopefully, you're able to join me there tomorrow evening. Fingers crossed. Otherwise, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.
We'll see you then.
Ciao.
Bella.